Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
Was attending some of their launch events. It used to be just called Chinese in US doing energy work, so it's now called EarthnEn. And then all of a sudden, one day, I got caught up to them, and they said, "Do you want to come to lead the organization?" I was like, "What? What's going on?" So I was wondering, if I become the leader of the organization, what do I want the organization to be? I'm not super excited just to run a social club. And that's why we have completely co-founded, changed the organization to be a platform that globally energy professionals can collaborate and can talk to each other, and all run by volunteers. Because in your day jobs, you have your colleagues, you have your customers, you have your vendors. Your relationship is so transactional. And in you really do the programs and then the volunteer work that you really care about. You create events that you're really interested in. Actually, this event is called Inspire. At the very beginning, the Inspire Summit, we were thinking of doing it at like a TED-style climate event. And then COVID happened. So that kind of like changed the entire thing. One of the speakers actually came from Africa and did an online presentation of what they wanted to do for bringing energy access to Africa. And after the event, she came to us and wanted to become an EarthnEn volunteer. And then during our interview, had with her and said, "Why do you want to join EarthnEn as a volunteer?" And it was like a very striking moment for me. She was sitting in a tent with not so great internet and said, "I want to bring knowledge to Africa." It was very inspiring for me. Say, the network we're building together, we're not here just to create business opportunities in the US. We're not just talking about decarbonization in these rich countries that you take electricity as granted. You see everything that you have, you're so familiar with. There's another world out there in the whole decarbonization space. We have so much longer road to go. And then EarthnEn became a really global organization. Now we have volunteers in Africa, in Middle East, in Latin America. Wow, it's very hard to coordinating our meetings, Zoom meetings. So, we also have team members in Asia, so really, really hard. But I'm very proud of how the organization has been evolved today. And our leadership team, they volunteer to take leadership position as well in the organization. And then it's run by volunteers and then defined by volunteers. And actually Wade, today our host from Plug and Play, used to be an event goer for EarthnEn and also joining as a EarthnEn volunteer. And then, really leveraging his day job to create opportunity for the community. So I want to really thank Wade for that. And a little bit about how I see our own EarthnEn members and EarthnEn volunteers. They evolve in their career ladder. So some of them, they came in as EarthnEn volunteer a little bit junior in their career, and now many of them are like really senior pillar positions in, in companies, in energy companies, managing the entire sustainability programs. And it's just like a network of friendship that you can carry on for a long, long, long time. And also for me, how I became, like as founder of a venture capital firm. I used to, when I just came to the Bay Area, I work in the Berkeley National Lab as a climate researcher. And the EN really helped me to build my way until there, including one of my jobs. It's a corporate venture capital. They couldn't find anybody who wanted to suitable for their job, and they talked to me, said, "You're the president of EN. You must know a lot of people. Do you know who might be suitable for this role?" And I said, "I'm interested." So that's how I move around. Really, my own career ladder, my own vision, and my own network have been built on today. So again, switch my hat a little bit to be my to the venture capital hat. We invest in early stage startup companies, really using deep technology to solve climate change. And we like to invest in companies even if they don't have any revenue. And we help them to commercialize and to get to the next step. And for the investor side, if you're interested in doing climate investing, we're launching a climate investment accelerator starting in April, and the application is by the end of March. So if you're interested in investing in climate technologies and really want to know what solutions really help to decarbonize, that's also an opportunity that feel free to talk to me. And again, as a board member and co-founder of Energy Innovation Network, I want to thank everybody for coming. And I really appreciate our EN volunteers to make it possible. All the speakers come today to share your knowledge about the decarbonization space, and all the audience here today. I hope you all get something out of it, and you can all meet great connections, meaningful connections today. And thank you again for Plug and Play for co-hosting.
Thank you, Jane, and congratulations on growing the EIN group. Since the first time I attended was 2019, I think they had an event in Filoli Park, and I was pretty impressed. This was in the early days of the energy innovation community growing, and we've been a very big supporter of their group. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Wade Bitaraf. I'm the founder of our energy practice at Plug and Play. I wanted to share, well, first of all, welcome you and welcome all the startups, our speakers, our attendees to be here tonight. Like I said, this is an EIN event, but I was asked to give a little update on what we do at Plug and Play as a whole and where we are as it relates to energy and climate, what are some of our focus areas, a quick snapshot of our portfolio, and then we'll pass it over to our MC of tonight, Kevin Osborne, who is also an ambassador of EIN, who's gonna introduce our speakers and bring the startups up on the stage, and then we'll have some networking afterwards. So I mentioned we're gonna have an amazing lineup of speakers, but really excited to see the founders and entrepreneurs who are gonna present tonight. We have about 10 startups that are gonna pitch. These are short pitches, so there's only 5 minutes. Hopefully you get to hear about what they do, and then you can find them at their demo table right here to learn a little bit more and do a deeper dive into their topics. So what Plug and Play has done over the years is build a large global technology transfer network of about 40 different hubs around the world. These hubs are industry clusters. Our model is a membership model. We have large corporations who sponsor Plug and Play. We just hit, for the first time in the history of Plug and Play, an 8-figure revenue in our partnerships. We work with about 550 large corporates that are seeking technology needs, and they work with us. In every one of these hubs that you see here, the focus areas and the direction of these hubs are steered by the group of active members. For instance, here in our Silicon Valley office, we have the largest practice, but when you go to Hamburg, for instance, our focus is purely on the hydrogen economy with the Port of Hamburg, City of Hamburg, Shell, Phillips 66. Most recently, we had Tokyo Gas, who became our newest member, and a few new exciting announcements that we're going to have in the next week or two as it relates to our hydrogen hub in Hamburg and how it is tied into our Silicon Valley activities. Or when you go to, for instance, in Calgary, we work with some large oil and gas companies that are looking to decarbonize their sector from across the value chain. Soon we're going to have some new announcements as it relates to new partnerships there as well. And then we try to bring the startups that are either early or later stage to go and accelerate the commercialization of their technology, whether it's in hydrogen, carbon capture, energy storage, or digital solutions. The way we cluster our verticals, what we call here, or practices, is that we're looking at the electrification of transportation, the energy industry, maybe oil and gas or electric utilities, the built environment, and the industries that account for about 80% of the global carbon emissions within our energy and climate or smart cities groups. Then we have a very robust practice focusing on sustainability, where we're looking at food, ag, fashion, new materials, plastics, where we run about 9 different hubs with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. We're going to be making a new announcement in the Middle East with that hub. And this project has produced more than 200 pilot projects with the corporations that have committed to work with startups. This is a really quick snapshot of the portfolio companies that we've had within our energy and climate practice. As you can see, we have a very heavy focus on emissions tracking. About a third of all of our partners have pledged to have a net carbon zero, and they want to be able to know where these emissions come from, how do they measure it, how do they count it, and how do they offset it and remove the carbon. They need a lot of help, and there are a lot of interesting technologies that do that. We have a focus on supply chain traceability and transparency using blockchain technologies, whether it's in automotive industry or oil and gas. There are companies that are using blockchain to build smart contracts for procurement of processes, and a number of other interesting areas that help to bring, for instance, the energy footprint of large industrial and commercial buildings down using plug load energy management. Einride is another interesting company that we invested when they were a few people. They're building a medium-duty, fully autonomous, fully electric truck, and we invested in them when there were 2 or 3 people, but they raised $652 million afterwards. So there are a lot going on, and we're going to hear a lot from our speakers today about the trends that are happening in the space. Plug and Play has been named as one of the more active climate tech venture capitalists, given the investments that we've made in the startups that in a way or shape combat climate change and remediate emissions. This is a quick snapshot of all those 4 verticals that I mentioned. Partners that we're working with, they're looking at across the value chain, from electrons and molecules, from where they're produced, all the way to where they put it in their car or turn the lights on, and they look at like molecules, systems of systems, and they're looking at the energy industry and its intersection with the transportation industry, heavy industries, as well as built environment. These are the partners that many of which are presented today, and hopefully you get a chance to meet with. As far as our energy practice is concerned, we launched in 2017. We've looked at about 5,000 startups. These are the companies that we either have reached out to actively or they apply to us, and then we accelerated about 200 of them in our 12 cohorts. Today and yesterday, we had the selection days of our IoT, real estate, mobility groups. These programs will last for another 2 or 3 months. In the first week of June, we're going to have a demo day where about 400 or 500 corporations will be here. About 200 startups will come on stage and present to all of the partners. So that's the first week of June. For whoever's interested to kind of participate in that series of demo days, they can reach out to us. And the companies have been able to create a huge impact after they've gone through our programs, whether it's funding or job creation or commercialization. Thank you so much. That's all for me. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the MC of this event tonight, Mr. Kevin Osborne. Oh yeah, so our team actually have created this really cool practice where you would take your phone up, scan that QR code, and let us know what you're interested to get out of this event tonight. What are you most looking to gain? This is, again, one of the more active objectives that we have this year is to have more of these in-person events. And we like, as it relates to EIN, it's a volunteer-led organization. So if you'd like to help them out to grow the community, please reach out to the team. Maybe raise your hand from the EIN team. If you'd like to work with us as Plug and Play, we have a few of our venture colleagues in the back. You can reach out to them, as well as our operations team. And then we'll take it maybe a few seconds before everyone puts their notes here. Oh, is that right? There's a limit on the words.
You can do it again. You do it a second time.
And I think they get bigger as you put in more of the same words here. It's like a cloud map of the words. So we like this session to be very interactive, by the way. After each speaker presents their slides, we open it up to the audience. You can think about your questions ahead of time. We probably have time for 1 or 2 questions max, but then hopefully we can have further questions at the tail end of the event in the networking hours. Be inspired, that's the word I saw. We can skip this one. Thank you. Please help me welcome Kevin.
Thank you very much, Wade. It's truly a pleasure. So my name's Kevin. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I'm an ambassador with the Energy Innovation Network. I'd like to especially acknowledge the volunteers of EIN for the dedication, and also Plug and Play for the staff and venue. On behalf of EIN, I want to acknowledge our sponsor and our gratitude. The Great Way Trading and Transportation, they were founded in San Francisco in 1993. They are a customs brokerage, freight forwarding, and logistics services. I just want to thank them for their contribution. All right, for the main event today, we want to welcome you to this annual forum on low carbon innovation. Today, we are going to bring you together some of the brightest minds in research initiatives, business technology strategies, and promising investment opportunities in low carbon innovation space. Now, you probably have all heard, the United States has a target of reducing 50% of greenhouse gases below 2005 levels by 2030, and in 2050 to get to net zero. Now, achieving this is not just federal. This is about businesses, and that creates new investment opportunities where we can decouple economic gain from emissions. And just in 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act put in $370 billion in investments, and it will be part of that acceleration in private investment in clean energy solutions in every sector of the economy. So every speaker that has agreed to come on stage today will have time for the audience to think of questions. So I want you to prepare yourself for a few questions as they will open it up after each keynote speech. We will also have questions for our panel discussion for a Q&A. All right, let's get started. Our first speaker, keynote speaker, I'm happy and honored to announce Dr. Sean Bushart. He is an Electric Power Research Institute funded World Economic Forum project fellow working to develop and execute a program for accelerating the transition of industrial clusters to net zero in North America. And put this in context. When you hear industrial clusters, this has implications for addressing 15 to 20% of global carbon dioxide emissions. And the term, think of geographic regions of co-located energy supply and demand companies and enabling synergistic approaches toward net zero. And as we start, we're going to have a video that's going to play. Please roll it.
The changing climate is more apparent every day, and the road to net zero can feel long. But with broad collaboration across sectors, global decarbonization can become reality. With the World Economic Forum initiative, in collaboration with Accenture and EPRI, transitioning industrial clusters toward net zero. These regions have concentrated economic activity with opportunities for integration and optimization across facilities to reach net zero affordably. So what could these look like? Imagine we're at a port with shipping, chemical manufacturing, oil refining, heavy manufacturing, and power generation nearby. These players working together will create synergies across facilities and reduce waste throughout the region. The steam methane reforming plant produces clean hydrogen from natural gas with carbon capture. This hydrogen is used as a raw material or low-carbon fuel for industrial processes like steel, cement, and other heavy manufacturing. And down the road, low-carbon electricity supports clean transportation fleets and office buildings. Leveraging these shared resources across facilities, companies, governments, and regional partners de-risks investments and accelerates emissions reductions. But these clusters are not hypothetical. With 17 industrial clusters already launched, the roadmap to global decarbonization is being drawn today. Targeting 100 industrial clusters, the impact will be measurable. 1.6 billion metric tons of CO2 avoided, 17.8 million direct jobs supported, and $2.5 trillion in economic activity. Together, we're shaping the future of energy. Join us.
Please put your hands together and let's welcome Dr. Sean Bushart to the stage. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Kevin. That's great. I can't believe you found that video. That video just came off the shelf literally last Friday. So good job in that, and thanks to my colleagues at EPRI for putting that together. So this is a great audience for me. I'm really excited to be talking to you. I hope to get to meet folks during the breaks and during the reception tonight. I'm very interested to hear what you're doing in this space. What I'm going to do in the time that we have here is kind of set the stage for some of the discussions that are going to follow. I'm going to do a couple things. One is I'll ground us a little bit in net zero. What is net zero? Give a couple examples of how that plays out within industry. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about this concept that you just heard about in the video, which is industrial clusters. And how is that a mechanism to drive decarbonization globally? And then I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in this space with the World Economic Forum, and EPRI is a partner with the World Economic Forum. There we go. So this is, I'm going to just cover snippets of some of these references. Each one of these slides has some links and some resources you can look into for more details. This is some analysis that was done at EPRI. EPRI, my colleagues right over here in Palo Alto, did this economic analysis. And what it does is it takes a look at what does net zero mean? This is U.S. policy-driven definition. U.S. policy is that we will reach net zero industry-wide by 2050. It'll be 50% there by 2030. So those are the two bullet points you see on the chart there. So you can see going back to 2005 what progress we made and what challenges are ahead. A couple of takeaways from this analysis. Again, it's based on the economics of how do we get there? How do we get there based on what are some of the technologies currently available? What does the forecast look like? And you'll see a couple of things. One is you see economy-wide, we've got a long way to go. Okay, we've got a long way to go between 2020 and 2050. But you can see if you break it down into some of the sectors, you look and see where progress has been made. A lot of progress has been made in the electricity sector. A lot of that is actually due to not only the advent of renewables, putting more renewables online, but a lot of that actually historically, going back to 2005, has been due to the switch from coal to gas. So there's been a tremendous benefit actually in terms of decarbonization from that switch. To get there further though, we've got to move away from fossil fuels, look at all of our options in terms of clean energy supply. And then as we look at that clean energy supply, using that clean energy supply to decarbonize other sectors of the economy. And that's what you see in that next section there with transportation. Transportation, I'm sure this is one that you are very familiar with, but that's the biggest opportunity out there in terms of driving us towards our net zero goals within the U.S. as decarbonized transportation. And then you can see the last one out there is industry. So industry is, and buildings are some of the hardest to tackle. So what are we going to do in that space, and how do we get in front of that? This is another set of analysis. This is from my colleagues at the forum. This is a great reference. It's called the Net Zero Industry Tracker. Lots of data. It really goes in deep into each one of these industries and gives not only data, but it gives technology kind of glimpses there. So a couple things. So about 30% of global emissions, when you back out to be global, are from the industrial sector. So that's a pretty significant amount. And if you look at that sector, about 80% of those emissions are from these contributors. So oil and gas, steel, cement, aluminum, ammonia. And one of the biggest ones out there, as you see, is steel. Steel is one of the hardest to decarbonize. So I'm going to give you just a little bit more of a flavor. I'm not going to have time to go into each one of these sectors or each one of these industries, but I will give you a little bit of a flavor for the challenge ahead for steel. And this is very small. I'm not going to read through all this material. I'm just going to hit a couple of points here. So for steel, there's a couple of technologies that are used in steel making. There's oxygen boiler types of traditional technologies. There's also electric arc furnace technologies that are out there. So there's three things you can do with those technologies. You can bring in clean energy supply in some cases to decarbonize. You can bring in hydrogen in some cases, or you can use carbon capture and sequestration to pull off the CO2 from those technologies. You can see when you take a look at it, if you have an interest, you want to drill down, some of those technologies are kind of in the later TRL stage. Some of those there's a couple of those that are ready for commercialization and ready to use, but there's a couple of them that are pretty early stage. And that really goes to some of the electrolysis types of technologies that are out there that are emerging. So the takeaway from this is that there are two challenges out there. One is to drive the technologies that we need for decarbonization. That's an opportunity for this community that's heavily looking at technology. But there's another piece of this. So not only do you need to have the right technologies and need to have them available, but they need to be affordable. So if you look at another aspect of this, which is deploying these technologies. So if you go back and you look at the things I just talked about, hydrogen, clean energy supply, you're going to need a significant amount of infrastructure to actually execute and to make those happen. For steel alone, you're talking over $2 trillion worth of infrastructure globally to make that happen. So it's not just a matter of the technologies and bringing new ideas to the table. There's actually a bigger opportunity from the financial standpoint in terms of bringing that infrastructure together to really make a difference. So that's a little bit about where this concept of industrial clusters comes in. So industrial clusters, the concept is that within geographic regions, in some cases you naturally already have these industrial groups that are working together. You have hubs and clusters that are focused on steel making and cement already. You have ports that are already there together. You have other types of transportation hubs. And the idea is that within each one of those geographies, looking to see what the industries are in that region and figuring out, is there common infrastructure that you can bring to the table to collectively decarbonize the region as a whole? And it's a different type of thinking because it's not just taking a power plant or taking a steel mill and adding something on. It's thinking about where can you put common pipelines, for example? Where can you invest in hydrogen generation that's a common investment that's going to be shared within that region? And that's a different way of doing business than we have in the past. It takes a very sophisticated type of partnering to pull that off. So those are some of the things that we think about. I think it's a little bit easier to see a couple examples than to kind of hear it. This is one that's in the UK, Northwest, so Manchester, Liverpool area. So this is a region that's been a traditional industrial cluster in that region. It's very heavily invested in terms of the ports, in terms of steel, cement in the region, as well as a very big gas-based industry. So what they've done is they have invested and they've developed a strategy and a vision for this region for common decarbonization infrastructure. And it's two things that they're putting on the table. One is hydrogen production infrastructure and pipelines that can be shared among the communities. used for transportation, used for industry. And that clean hydrogen will also be coupled with carbon capture and sequestration infrastructure. So another set of pipelines that will actually take the emissions, carbon emissions, and will pipe that out to some deep sea injection capabilities that they have in the region. So two aspects of that are really driving this in the region. An interesting thing about this is they're moving very quickly here. They have a huge amount of community support, not only from the businesses but from the local community, because this is an area that is going to depend on this transformation to be economically viable in the future. So it's an economic question as much as it is a decarbonization question in terms of how do you keep this region viable, how do you create green jobs, how do you keep this whole initiative moving. Here's another example. I'll bring this a little closer to home. Here's the H2 Houston hub is another cluster that's forming. This particular one is focused on hydrogen generation, but they have other things going on in the region. But as you can imagine, this is Texas, this is Houston, this is the Gulf region. This is very oil and gas and petrochemical focused. So that allows them to bring a few tools to the table. One is that they already generate a significant amount of hydrogen for the petrochemical industry, from the oil and gas industry for industrial uses. So they already have the mechanisms, they have some of the infrastructure to utilize and generate that hydrogen. The challenge is how do you transform that current types of hydrogen to clean hydrogen? So you need to do a couple things, and they have a plan to go from what we call blue hydrogen, which is hydrogen production coupled with CO2 sequestration, and eventually to more green hydrogen using the vast amount of wind power that they have in Texas and bringing that into play. So the other thing that they have is they have a huge network of pipeline infrastructure, so they can couple that not only to transport the hydrogen to the industrial communities, but also to sequester it in some of the oil and gas fields that they have. So they have a lot of infrastructure going there, and they're well on their way. One unique aspect of this is that a part of their whole economics in terms of making this work is also around the export of hydrogen. So they plan almost 2/3 of their revenue that they want to expect to get within the region from this hydrogen infrastructure and hydrogen development to be from export of clean hydrogen and other low carbon fuels overseas. And they're already having a lot of conversations on that. So there'll be a large export business there. Okay, so what are we doing in this space? You saw the video, so I don't need to spend tons of time on this. But a couple things. One is that we are the World Economic Forum collaborating with EPRI and Accenture. This is kind of a nonprofit, if you will, pro bono effort to drive these clusters. We have an ambition to get 100 of these clusters built and as part of our network over the next 3 years. We've been doing this for about a year into it, and we've got 17 that we have so far kind of signed on to our initiative. And we do two things. One is that with clusters and hubs that are just forming, we come in as an impartial broker to help them develop those partnerships and get up off the ground, get their initial vision. And we also bring in the more mature clusters, like the HyNets you just saw, and you bring them into this network to help to share lessons learned and best practices to speed up the process for everyone else that's looking to develop these clusters. So that's our goal. A lot of great deliverables and reports and stuff. A lot of these are public. You can go on to the forum website and download those, and gives good background in terms of the technology framework. There's a great resource there for benchmarking these clusters. And it's all about the impact, not only the CO2 reduction potential, but also the economic impact, the jobs impact. So how do you make all that work is a key aspect of our initiative. Here's the 4 pillars. So you're out there, you're working with clusters, you're working with hubs, you're interested in this. How do you move these forward? 4 key things. It's not just about the technology, as I mentioned. The technology is key, it's foundational, but what really the hardest thing to do in these hubs is the partnerships, is to get people together in the region who may be competitive. They may be competitors in some cases. They're not used to working together. They don't have mechanisms to work together. In building that framework so people will be willing to invest in this common infrastructure and build a trust in the region to make that happen. You have to understand the policy drivers, barriers. Some places you can do renewable hydrogen, some places you can do hydrogen using CCS. And you kind of have to take that into account in region by region. And then financing. As many of you are aware, there's lots of federal money in the US on the table right now for these different hubs and clusters. How do you make that sustainable, though? It's just a drop in the bucket of what you need over 4 to 5 years to build this infrastructure. How are you going to match that? And I've had great conversations with a number of you already on that front. That's badly needed for these hubs and these clusters. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is just another resource for you. This is a great benchmarking report that we did that goes into detail on those 4 pillars I just described, and then takes through the different stages of cluster formation up to execution. So you can look to see how those pillars change and transform over time. Okay, so this is my last slide, but I want to spend a little bit of time on this because this is a technology-focused group. So there's a lot of different technologies you can bring to bear when thinking about these clusters. We've kind of defined these and kind of grouped them into 4 kind of pillars, if you will, around the technologies. But this is, again, not to be an exclusive list. So as you put these clusters together, you want to look to see what your industry composition is within the region. Do you have steel? Do you have ports? Do you have manufacturing? What's your existing infrastructure? Do you have pipelines there? Do you have utilities that are looking to deploy large amounts of green power, green energy in the region? And from that, from putting the pieces together in terms of what you already have in the region and what some of the partners might be, then you can start to think about what technologies are going to make sense within a region. And it's not, you don't want to just pick one of these. It's probably all of these at some level, but you've got to pick a couple of these to make your big bets on in terms of infrastructure. So hydrogen, we talked about that. That's one of the key ones out there. But there's lots of different ways you can deploy hydrogen. You can do green hydrogen. Green hydrogen suggests that you've got renewables that are driving the process there, producing hydrogen without any carbon footprint. But you can also have other flavors of hydrogen. Pink hydrogen, for example, is something that a lot of folks are looking at. That's using nuclear to drive the electrolysis process for hydrogen. You can also have what we call blue hydrogen, and I hate to use these terms because a lot of people don't like them, but coupling a hydrogen production along with CCS. And that can either be an interim step or it could be a longer term step in terms of clean hydrogen production. But this carbon capture and utilization infrastructure is really important, and not only in cases where you want to couple that with your hydrogen production, but also a lot of the industries, as I mentioned with the steel industry, do not have good mechanisms now, good technologies without sequestration to really drive kind of low carbon production at this point. So carbon capture infrastructure can be a very important tool. There's also some technology barriers. There's also some permitting barriers. There's also some policy barriers that's not always available everywhere, but it's an important thing to look at and to see what you can do there. Direct electrification, renewable heat, another strong option. If you think about something like a transport hub, you're probably going to be using some combination of direct electrification, particularly for your light vehicles, and then couple that with hydrogen for your more heavy-duty vehicles. But there's a lot of industrial processes as well that can benefit from direct electrification and also renewable heat, particularly those that don't require high heat processes. Then the last thing I want to leave you with is that as you start to think about this opportunity, to think about these clusters on a regional basis, it's very interesting to work with clusters, for example, in China. In China, they're putting together this infrastructure from scratch. And it's easier for them to do that, I think, in China because they don't have to go through extensive permitting processes and such. They're building new infrastructure. So as you're building these clusters, you can think about how do you match up your industries so that you're able to get more circularity and systemic efficiency out of co-locating the industries. So how do you take, for example, a steam plant, an electric plant, and reuse the water supply perhaps for an input for a manufacturing process? How do you take some of the waste heat from one of these processes and use that to drive another industry that needs that waste heat to drive their processes? So thinking about this circularity, particularly where you have petrochemicals and chemicals and other closely correlated industries, is very key and is a really unique opportunity around here in terms of thinking about innovation. So I think, okay, these are my colleagues leading the initiative. So I'll just leave you with our contact information, and I think we have time for a question or two.
Let's give a round of applause for Sean. All right, what an exciting effort that's taking place here and going forward, not just here but in China as well. Any questions from the audience? Yes, I'm just going to bring the microphone over to you. One moment.
So given that CCS can actually not be carbon neutral if you're just using it for EOR, oil recovery, and other sources where you're not actually storing it, what are you thinking about in accelerating the green hydrogen versus the blue or pink hydrogen transition?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's certainly an interesting topic. So I think, for us, we're truly looking at how do you get to net zero. So CCS obviously has a lot of applications. You mentioned oil and gas recovery, and I think that is actually if you look at the Houston example I gave, I think they are looking at that early on to enhance the economics of what they're doing overall. But I think my personal view is that using CCS can be a good interim step to drive the economics forward for things like hydrogen utilization. So until we get to where green hydrogen is more cost effective, this can be a good tool to deploy as long as, like you point out, you truly are driving carbon neutral behavior through the use of CCS. I think that's really where we want to get to with this. Good question.
Any other questions? All right, Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Up next, I'm very excited to share that we have a panel on emerging technologies and corporate ventures. It is my pleasure to introduce our panel moderator, Rob Glenn. He is the founder and managing member of Acanthus Climate Ventures, a San Francisco-based provider of business development services to companies and investment firms offering solutions to the cause and effects of climate change. He has also played a key role in launching and growing the San Francisco office of the Bloomberg New Energy Finance, one of the world's leading providers of data, models, and analyst insight into the low-carbon transition. For the panels, we have Sarah Manson, Global Energy and Sustainability Director at CBRE, Caroline Funk, Partner at Blue Bear Capital, Amy Bailey, Director of Innovation and Portfolio Management at National Grid, and Sheng-Yuan Su, Sustainability Director at Zendesk. We're going to bring the chairs up, and I'd like to invite our panelists to the stage.
Oh, good. I was able to show my socks. Hi. Very pleased to have this group here. I was honestly just felt so honored that Wade thought I could do something like this for Plug and Play in the EIN. Before we get started, we want to do a kind of raise of hands just to give us a sense of the room. So how many people here actually work for what we would call a corporate that basically employs lots of people and maybe wants to go net zero? Okay. How many of you work for an investment firm? Okay. How many of you might have come here looking to meet investors? Okay. And then how many of you came here really just for the luxury of learning? I mean, just, yeah. Fantastic. Okay, great. The introductions have been made. I intentionally wanted everybody to sit here because I didn't plant the answers, but I did give them the idea of the questions. So since we were here to talk about net zero and how we get there, I figured I'd ask them each. They all come from, as you saw, they each come from different kinds of companies, but everybody has an ambition, whatever their industry sector is. So I wanted to ask the group, basically, first, what do you actually do for your company? And if your organization's made a net zero commitment, how far along are you, and how far do you have to go? Amy?
All right. Hi, everyone. Amy Bailey from National Grid Partners, or NGP. NGP, if you're not familiar with us, we are the venture capital and disruptive innovation arm of National Grid Group, which is a large multinational energy company. We have regulated electricity and gas businesses in the UK, as well as on the East Coast here in the US. And we also do a lot of competitive business as well, including developing renewable energy projects, as well as kind of subsea cables and infrastructure, to name a few examples. So that's National Grid Group. Maybe a little bit about NGP as well, so folks can kind of understand how we're structured. That way you understand what it is that I do as well. So we are, the venture capital and disruptive innovation arm. We were formed in 2018 by the group's CEO, John Pettigrew, and he really formed us, as he says it, to disrupt ourselves. That is to say, to play a very proactive role in the energy transition, to take a very proactive kind of posture, and really future-proof all of our businesses across the group. And so we do that in three ways. We invest in companies. So we have over 400 million in investment authority. We've invested in 40 different startups right now, largely under the umbrella of digitization, decentralization, and decarbonization. We also deploy those startups in our business units. And so we have a dedicated BD function, a business development function within our team that works very closely with our business units as well as our portfolio companies to get the technology kind of out in the field and really scale it across the group. And then the third thing that we do is the innovation side. So that's a side actually that I sit on. So we're an internal incubator effectively for new businesses incubated within the group. And so my own role is Director of Innovation and Portfolio. So you could think of me as more of the COO of the accelerator. I keep the trains running on time, basically, and also manage centralized analysis for various companies. And to your second question, as far as our net zero goals, National Grid published a responsible business charter back in 2020, and that really sets out all of our environmental as well as broader ESG goals, including we have a net zero goal by 2050. We've also set some interim targets, so 90% by 2040, 80% by 2030. And that's all scope 1 and 2 emissions for the group, and that's relative to a 1990 baseline. We are, I would say, on track of meeting this upcoming interim target, but the last few years have been a bit wonky. We've had, COVID, obviously, we have a war in Europe, which impacts certainly our European businesses as well as just globally. We've also had a lot of extreme weather. So there's a lot of fluctuation in those dots, but it looks like we're heading in the right direction, and we're certainly doing everything that we can to make sure that that's the case. Thanks.
I'm next. Okay, great. Everybody, great to meet you. Carolyn with Blue Bear, as a reminder. So our focus is investing, traditional venture capital investing in the energy transition. We believe this is once in a lifetime opportunity. We're going to spend multiple $1 trillion. I think we can discuss how many trillion it's going to be, but to make all this happening. And our focus in that kind of broader category is investing in software and data-centric technologies that have energy infrastructure or climate as one of the end markets. We believe there's a lot going on that needs help with accelerating, debottlenecking, if you will, and just de-risking that kind of transition as it's going on. And yeah, that's where we focus on Blue Bear. We've been around since 2016, investing out of our third fund now. We are have our headquarters down in LA. We have representation in Houston, London, New York. I'm in the Bay Area, actually the only Bay Area person at the team, so glad to be here. We have about a little less than 30 companies in our portfolio, and while being traditional like venture capital institutional investor, we track also ESG in a broader sense, and thus kind of the decarbonization impact that our portfolio has. And we believe that's the strongest mark that we can make while not being an impact investor, but a financial investor, still helping folks that we invest in figure out how to monitor and improve on their impact. In terms of stage, we invest in companies that are post-revenue. So really, if you have a couple of pilots going on, maybe one with Amy, or product revenue, then come to us. Yeah, in terms of footprint globally, our focus is in North America and Europe to invest in. That's about it from my side.
Sarah.
I'm Sarah Manson. I'm an Energy and Sustainability Director with CBRE. And right now my client is Intuit, so I'm in charge of Intuit's corporate global real estate portfolio, which, as Sean mentioned, is the built environment and one of those really difficult areas to decarbonize. CBRE has set our own net zero goals, and many of our clients have set their own net zero goals ahead of the 2050 goal. We have near-term and short-term, near-term and long-term targets that we're helping our clients achieve. Many of our clients have very ambitious goals that were set by someone in the executive team, and now we're helping them figure out how to achieve those goals. So setting science-based targets and meaningful emissions inventory. That point that I think it was Sean, no, actually Wade brought up, the emissions tracking group. I'd love to see that because that's a big area that a lot of our clients are focusing on right now is emissions tracking. And we can't reduce something that we can't measure. So I'm really excited to hear from folks today around your ideas in that space.
Hi everyone, Shenyuan Su. I'm Sustainability Director at Zendesk, and I lead our environmental sustainability work. For those of you who don't familiar with Zendesk, we are a customer success, customer experience technology company. We provide SaaS cloud computing products related to customer service, support, sales, and other customer communications. And for us, environmental sustainability is sort of business imperative for us, and our strategy really focuses on two big areas. One is really reducing our operational value chain emissions, such as our office emissions, our supply chain, our business travel. And second big part is around accelerating and helping on global societal level decarbonization and carbon removal solutions. And over the past few years, we have made a great progress on our sustainability work. We have achieved many amazing goals, such as 100% renewable electricity goals, carbon neutral goals. Now we provide all our customers a carbon neutral product, and our employees' business travel and employee commute are all carbon neutral as well. We're also committed to setting additional 1.5 degree aligned science-based target. We're still working with the SBTi on the target validation, actually, but most likely our target will be continuing further reducing our scope 1 and 2 emissions by over 80% by 2030, and also engaging over 2/3 of our suppliers by emissions to set their own science-based target by 2027. And beyond emission reduction activities, we also believe that companies like us have a critical role to play to help accelerate global level carbon removal and reduction activities. And we think that carbon removal is one of the areas that deems very critical and also needs our help the most. So we are also committed to buying permanent carbon removal from this year to 2030. To hopefully help those early stage technologies to grow and really help drive the cost down, bend the cost curve, and help those technologies to mature so that they can be at the scale and cost needed for a net zero future.
That's a great lead into the next question, which actually is a little bit of building on what you already shared with us. Recently, Zendesk joined a group called Frontier, and it's a coalition of companies like yours to really advance carbon removal technology investment. Given what you just said, can you actually tell us, how big your footprint really is, and how this really, this coalition fits within your strategy, and actually tell us a little bit about some of the other companies you're working with.
Yeah, happy to. So we're really excited to join Frontier community, which is an advanced market commitment to accelerate carbon removal technologies by guaranteeing future demand. It was founded by some other big tech companies like Meta, McKinsey, etc. We were really excited to join the group early this year. And since we just joined, a lot of the strategies and deals and processes are still in progress. But I'm happy to share, how carbon removal fits into our climate strategy overall, and a little bit about our journey here. So for Zendesk, our scope 2 emissions mainly come from our global office operations, and our scope 3 are mainly upstream supplier activities and also employee travel. And as I mentioned earlier, over the past few years, we have been really prioritizing emissions reductions, in our operational value chain, such as sourcing 100% renewable electricity, implementing, policies and campaigns to reduce employee travel emissions, and also engaging our suppliers to set their climate goals and reduce our scope 3 emissions. But beyond those, we are definitely passionate about advanced technologies like carbon removal, and we wanted to, use our financial resources to help those technologies to grow and mature the market. And so that's why we started, buying carbon removal in 2020 as a pilot program. The program was actually sort of initiated by our software engineering team by reinvesting some saved dollars from our optimization of cloud computing and cloud usage. And back then we didn't have a long-term commitment like we do today, because we knew it was a very niche area, right? And then we just wanted to dip our toes into the water and see what we'll learn from it. So we did a couple of RFPs, we built our own sort of selection criteria, and we've also engaged our internal ESG committee, which includes C-level functional leaders from our company to help review and approve our purchasing plans. And then, back then, I would say that a lot of the early deals, while they were sort of structured as buying carbon removal tonnage when those companies deliver, a lot of the deals were structured as prepayment. So we didn't have any specific provisions or terms around, they have to deliver this amount of carbon removal tonnage by this date. And on that journey, we have seen some companies were really able to use our dollars to build their facilities, ramp up their operations, and deliver incremental carbon removal tonnage, which is amazing. But we've also seen some companies were really struggling with delivery and they fail, right? So it's very risky from both environmental and financial impact perspective. And so as a next chapter of our, I would say that two high-level learnings we had in that journey is that one, carbon removal industry needs predictable and stable financial support in order to grow. And second is that we know the market needs more mature and more robust verification and measurement standards to drive more investment from the buy side. And that's why, as this new chapter of our carbon removal journey, we joined the Frontier community, committing to continuing supporting and buying carbon removal from this year to 2030. And we really hope that we could aggregate demand with other large corporate buyers, send a strong signal to the market, so that those technology companies can use our buying commitment to finance their technologies and ramp up their operations and be able to scale. Overall, I think carbon removal technology and carbon removal is a very critical part of our climate strategy. And we are aware of the high risk, high uncertainty, and I think that's exactly the role we want to play, right? We want to bend the cost curve, we want to de-risk our portfolio, we want to find a pathway for more companies to join this journey. And last, I will say that while we are not expecting those technology companies to deliver the amount of tonnage that we would perhaps use to claim that we are net zero now, right? We're a net zero company. I do think that's a high level, long-term direction we want to go, and we know that we can't get there if we don't start today.
Wow, you're not your everyday corporate investor, that's for sure. Sarah, CBRE's massive global company with a significant commitment to climate of its own. You have lots of clients. You're embedded with one that actually has very little footprint itself. So tell us a little bit about what CBRE is doing for the Intuits of this world to help them advance beyond their existing emissions profile, and in addition to what you're doing in an everyday way to kind of help them with their built environment.
Yeah, that's right. So Intuit's square footage is something like 3 to 4 million globally. But CBRE and all of our companies is the size of a small European country. So when we're talking about CBRE setting net zero goals and helping to take responsibility for our client goals, it's a massive footprint. So I think I wrote down some of the challenges that we're facing, and one of them that your question makes me think about is that we're trying to bridge the gap between the corporate real estate leaders and the corporate responsibility leaders who are often, as I mentioned before, setting these goals. And it's kind of trickling to the corporate real estate leaders who are saying, wait, what's this net zero goal? Whose budget is going to pay for this? Why do I need to care? And that's where we step in because we want our clients to take responsibility for their corporate real estate footprint and their net zero goals. Any other?
That's good. It's fine.
All right.
All right, Amy. These are kind of innovative folks. Can you tell us where you're essentially, looking for collaboration opportunities with folks like this, as well as the folks in the venture capital world?
Yeah, sure. Happy to comment on that. Yeah, very impressive work by both of you. I would say that there are a few different ways in which we, love engaging with, leaders in this space. One way is like if we have portfolio companies that have relevant technologies, relevant solutions, like we're constantly trying to connect those dots and make those introductions, since there are a lot of win-win situations out there. And so that's one way in which we kind of engage with different forward-thinking partners, just matchmake effectively. Another way is if you all have footprints, either in the UK or in New York or Massachusetts, and are actually National Grid customers. We work very closely with our customers to try to develop, and this is less on the NGP side and more on the regulated side, to try to develop, more innovative customer offerings. And I would
explain, not to interrupt, but I just did, the difference between the regulated business and the unregulated business, and how it's relevant to investment decisions, actually.
Sure. So
just to clarify for for folks who might not know the difference, yeah.
Sure. So for the regulated businesses, those are businesses where we have natural monopolies. So in the UK, it's strictly transmission and distribution infrastructure. We also have kind of customer-facing operations as well. And in the US, it's both electric and gas transmission and distribution. And so those are regulated by the utilities commissions and the respective territories. And so naturally, we're subject to a very kind of different business model compared to the activities that we participate in the competitive space. I think from an NGP perspective, kind of the latter part of your question was kind of how it impacts investment decisions. So since we are a strategic investor, we're looking for investments that can not just deliver financial return, but that's one requirement, but also can deliver that strategic return. So over 80% of our portfolio companies are strategic. That means they are deployed in one of our business units. We probably have, a couple dozen business units really across the globe. And so either on the regulated side or the deregulated side. So there needs to be some connection for us to kind of get strategic value out of the particular kind of product or service. And so, yeah, we have that. So that requirement applies. It could either be a regulated business or a competitive business. So hopefully that was a clear explanation for those not steeped in the utility space.
Thank you. Now, Carolyn, you're the other side of a lot of deals that you might do with somebody like Amy. How do corporate VCs help you? To what extent you can identify any portfolio companies in which they played a role?
Yeah, that's a great question. And maybe let me just digress one little turn and say that just wanted to mention that we also have investors. Our limited partners have a very big interest consisting of a lot of family offices, a large footprint in the energy private equity industry, and also some institutional investors. Their goal is also to decarbonize. So we're supporting them with their investments in figuring out, okay, how can we make this work and how can we track and monitor what their portfolio and thus our portfolio is actually contributing. So it's a kind of stacked problem that we're all trying to solve, and getting to the right data and the bottom of it is actually pretty hard. To your question, working with strategics and corporate partners is very important for our portfolio and also for our investment decision, not just from kind of the corporate world, but also, as I mentioned, the energy private equity world, which still holds about 40% of the assets in the US energy industry. That's interesting. We're always thinking about the public side, but a lot of it is actually in private equity portfolios. So during our investment process, decision-making process, we'll talk to existing customers, potential future customers, make introductions for the companies that we're talking with and to see if there's actually a need for the technology that's immediate. We are looking for immediate impact, thus investing in companies that already have a little bit of revenue and have a product to deploy, because I think we all agree we're running out of time and have a lot of problems to solve in the next 8 years to get to our targets until 2030. So that's why we want to invest in things that are ready for deployment today. And then, I think National Grid Partners and Bluebear, I think we have at least 2 shared portfolio companies. I don't know, there are more. One of our portfolio companies just signed a bigger deal that is not in her portfolio yet. So maybe there's a future collaboration opportunity. So it's a lot of talking, collaboratively understanding where the industry is going.
Can you name names?
I can name names. 2 companies that are we share. One is called Copper Labs. They have the technology to turn any meter into a smart meter, including electricity, gas, and water. National Grid is actually using them in upstate New York for gas demand response, which I think is super forward thinking and going to be a bigger problem. The other company we share is called EarthnEn. They provide risk management for field workers and assets in the field. So PG&E is one of their big customers, figuring out how to do some wildfire hardening of their systems. And the third one, I don't know if that's public. I'll discuss with Amy first, and then we.
If you don't have another one with National Grid, is there another example of a CVC that you've worked with in a portfolio company specifically, and can you tell us what that company does?
Yeah,
'cause I think a lot of people would be interested.
Yeah, I think we've invested in companies together with like ABB and Honeywell and EIP being one across the board that had lots of utility LPs, and another company I want to maybe share, our most recent investment company called Charger Help. They provide reliability as a service for EV charging networks, and they have a corporate investor that's not announced yet.
God knows we need more reliable charging networks. Xiongwan and Sarah, one of the storylines out there in the last year has been, a pushback in some parts of the country toward, companies that are kind of trying to do the right thing, at least as far as we define it, but, it's looked at as something that's sort of tangential, if not irrelevant, to the core business. I do know that companies are serious about defining success in terms of return, product competitiveness, et cetera, recruitment of employees. Tell us each, maybe starting with Sarah, how it's impacting your business health, actually.
I've thought about this, Rob, because you did give us a little bit of a briefing on this. I love Joel McCower at GreenBiz. He just wrote an article. The #1 rule of ESG is don't talk about ESG. Put your head down, stay on track, and don't talk about it. I'm seeing a lot of that happening right now. Like Carolyn mentioned, we just don't have time to do anything other than that. We have a lot of work to do, and we can't let the politics delay us. I think about climate denial times in the early 2000s and a lot of the wasted time and energy of our experts. And so right now, I think if we have to dodge some bullets and just keep our heads down and get to work, that's where I'm seeing a lot of success happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I think I do believe ESG backlash is a real thing in the industry, for sure. I think just from my personal career perspective, I haven't seen that, at Zendesk. I think, our sustainability and climate progress is currently a really good manifestation of our company values of trust and customer success. And I think, our progress, our milestones really helped us build stronger and closer relationship with our customers, right? Because we are their scope 3 supply chain, and us achieving our goals definitely help them make their progress. And I think our progress also helped our employees feel really proud about working at Zendesk. I've heard about that personally many, many times in my meetings with employees and executives. And also, I think, our work definitely helped us mitigate risks, right? Many type of risks, like regulatory risk, disclosure, carbon pricing, and specifically on carbon removal, there is really tangible risk around limited high quality supply of carbon removal, right? For any companies who have net zero goals. So I think overall, I think sustainability and climate is really becoming a must-have, a new normal for any company in any industry. And I think, maybe like Sarah mentioned, right, companies are just talking less, using the term ESG specifically, but I think I have seen more and more companies just taking actions, moving full speed ahead. And one really interesting thing, or a shift that I've seen recently, is that as a corporate sustainability leader, as opposed to constantly begging business units and executives to embed sustainability into our strategy and our operations, I'm being pulled into many amazing opportunities and collaborations. You know, for instance, like sales teams reaching out to me saying, hey, how can we talk about sustainability in front of our customers, right? How can we articulate how our progress help them achieve their goals? And then engineering team reach out to me saying, hey, how can we write more greener code, right? How can we improve our efficiency so we can reduce emissions as well? And as some of you may know, Zendesk was recently acquired by an investment group, Permira and H&F, Hillman & Freeman. And they have their robust ESG programs, and they constantly engage their portfolio companies like Zendesk to act on climate change and sustainability. And I was in one of the community, sort of ESG community calls recently, and one thing I heard from their ESG leader is that hearing Zendesk committing to setting science-based target is like music to my ears. So yes, I think the industry is moving ahead, and you know, maybe someone are talking less, but I think, you know, more and more companies and more individuals are taking ambitious actions.
Yeah, I think this is just a moment in time.
I mean, when you mention Hillman and Freeman, you know, one of the, you know, iconic PE investors, right, prioritizing this, and I've seen this throughout the PE community now, and, you know, actually you go to a PE firm and they have people like you running sustainability and ESG and interfacing with not only portfolio companies, but with investors, just like you said, which leads me to ask the investors over there, tell us about your LPs. Ultimately, you know, it is about making money. They've, you know, your LPs, you know, need at some point to see exits. How are you managing little small issues like valuations, timelines, you know, decisions on what spaces or categories to sort of invest in, partly because, well, the market looks good, the comps look good. You know, I don't want to feed the answer here, but each of you can take a crack at that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, our thesis is just fundamentally aligned with that moment in time. So we're kind of drinking from a fire hose in terms of deal flow and what we can invest in, and are can be very picky, which is great. We probably screen about 300 companies a quarter in some shape or form, and pick usually one of them, maybe two. So that's just the level of scrutiny we can have at this point in time. Our LPs are really, some of them are really actively engaging and want to be working with our portfolio, and want to learn about things. So we're not set up as like a kind of an outreach organization like some of our peers are, but we do have regular calls with the more sophisticated LPs that want to kind of see from us what's happening, see how they can deploy those technologies to meet their own goals. But it's more on an on-demand basis. But just to finish up on the answer, I've been in the space since 2004, and I just think it's amazing how many people we have interested in kind of the energy transition and the net zero efforts at this point in time.
Thank you. Amy, you've got, one LP, is that true?
Yes.
How is that different and how is it the same?
Yeah, great question. So one LP, National Grid, of course. And as far as how it's different, well, we certainly have kind of a captive audience, or they do with us perhaps, and there's a lot of attention. You know, NGP was formed, you know, by our CEO in 2018. So it's a very high profile group, you know, large part of kind of his leadership position on the energy transition is kind of tied up in our formation and our success as well. But you know, what we found at least is that you can have dual objectives of achieving financial returns as well as strategic returns. They are not mutually exclusive. If anything, I would say they're somewhat self-reinforcing. And so for NGP's portfolio, I think I mentioned we have around 40 companies. Our average check size is around 5 million, but we invest in seed rounds all the way through to more growth stage companies. We can write $10 million checks, and it's because of our LPs allowed us that flexibility. Our National Grid has allowed us that flexibility to really partner with different types of companies that might be the most suitable for helping us achieve the strategic objectives. But we've already seen 7 exits, which is my understanding is that's very good. I'm not on the investor side, so I feel like I can hype them a little bit. So yeah, they're not mutually exclusive, I guess would be the final answer.
Great. All right, Kevin, where's Kevin? We're going to give you some time back with one last question. So I came out here in 1999 with Prudential Securities, and we had a strategic agreement with Silicon Valley Bank 2 miles down the road. I actually had a cube at Silicon Valley Bank. I was embedded just like you, along with doing other stuff. But anyway, headlines are all over the map. They're open for business, they're shut for business. I can't really figure it out. However, in our space, they've been a very big, important influencer, funder, community organizer, that kind of thing. So if the general sort of thesis is without SVB, what are we going to do? What's your reaction? How important is it? A non-event for our space for innovation funding? Or isn't it? I'll start.
I get this one. That's great. Thank you. I mean, first of all, my heart goes out to a lot of the founders who spent the sleepless weekend figuring out like payroll and very immediate kind of issues. So that was like a blip in time where nobody needed another kind of that type of sleepless night story. I think that, especially in the energy and climate space, Silicon Valley Bank has played an important role, not just on the banking and on the debt financing side, but also on the kind of building a connective tissue in the industry. And I'm sure everybody knows somebody who's either banking or working or has been at an event that Silicon Valley Bank sponsored. So we will see who's taking over. We don't have a glass bowl. I don't want to make any predictions. I will say the people that worked at Silicon Valley Bank, Silicon Valley Bridge Bank, are still there. And I've met a number of tremendously enthusiastic and great people, and I think they will figure out a way to support the industry further. It might take a little longer, and the last thing we need is more friction, and that's just what we're getting. Luckily, we're not in the crypto space. I would say that's a whole different conversation. There would probably be a little more doom and gloom in the room.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, happy to comment as well. So we've certainly had several portfolio companies that banked with SVB, and over the weekend our investors were in constant communication with them to ensure that they were able to meet their commitments under some worst case scenario. Thankfully, we're not dealing with the worst case scenario. We're very happy the U.S. government and HSBC stepped up, but I think that's a testament to the importance of not just the tech sector, but as Caroline said, it was very much a climate bank, a climate tech bank, and an energy, clean energy bank, and it's just too important. Governments recognize that, investors recognize that, and entrepreneurs do as well. And so I think we'll get through this.
Thank you. Unless you guys have comment, I'm happy to.
Sure. My only comment is that we did have global corporate communications come out to CBRE about this. And I think for us, it's we will see, obviously, with the importance of SVB in this space. I think we will see. We're all trying to drive innovation to achieve our net zero goals with our companies. So I think we'll be on the ripple effect, and we'll see it in due time.
I think on behalf of Zendesk, we're still forming a formal and official response on this. But I think for my personal experience, best wishes to anyone who was impacted by this collapse. And I think this is definitely, a warning for us, right? That we need a more resilient and a better, banking and financial system for the clean tech ecosystem.
Thank you. Great job, all of you. I think everybody kind of got a lot out of everything you said. Thanks for giving us your time, and I'll turn back over to Kevin.
If you just stay there for 1 minute. Oh. It's incredible to hear all the perspectives here today on the panel. Engagement from your side is just as important. And I want to put the floor open to anyone who has some questions for our panelists. Do I have yes. Microphone's coming.
Hey, how are you? My name is Jim Morganson. I work for a startup right now today called Relectrify. And I came from a startup, Jelly, which was a plug-and-play portfolio company. So it works, I'm happy to be here today. I wanted to ask you, talked about science-based targets. And without the economic side, it could just be investing in something that's kind of interesting. But I was curious if the panel would go deeper on how do you blend the science-based side, with the economics, because without the economics, it's not going to happen.
I think that's a very fair question. I think from my perspective, right, science-based target is really being governed by an initiative called Science-Based Target Initiative, as many of you know, right? So I believe that what that NGO do is that it sort of translates very complex climate science published by the IPCC to, actionable guidance and criteria that each industry, each part of the economy could follow. So I think that that's really helpful for companies like Zendesk, like CBRE, Intuit, et cetera, to make sure and have that confidence that this is the direction we should go, right? To make sure that whatever we do on emission reduction align with the latest climate science and making sure that that's something, the planet needed. I think from an economic side of things, I think, when we talk about financial return and ROI of climate initiatives, I think a lot of conversation around quantifying ROI and financial impact of our work, right? But I think from my perspective, a lot of the conversation I had with my stakeholders and audience, they are fully aware that sustainability is the right thing to do, right? And the key question is how. How do we take meaningful actions, and also about the why of our strategy. So I think, aligning our actions and aligning our processes with the science-based target criteria and sort of convening, more and more companies and, ask more and more companies to join this journey would definitely be helpful for the society decarbonization journey.
I think the only thing that I'll add is we're helping our clients understand the value of pursuing net zero goals in a few different ways. We're accounting for the cost of carbon in our decision making. In real estate, we're helping them set their roadmaps and understand the sooner they act, the less expensive it'll be in a lot of ways. I think Ben, one of our future speakers, asked a great question earlier, and he said, well, are you getting pressure from anywhere outside of your corporate responsibility leaders? Like, are you getting market pressure to achieve these net zero goals? And we are. So when we think about real estate, there are new codes coming, electrification codes, for example, coming in places like New York City that we have to pay attention to. And many of our companies like to go above and beyond code, go above and beyond certification like LEED or WELL certification. And they really want to know, how can we do that? So we're helping them understand how they can do it and they can make the decision about when they'll pay a premium for something like renewable energy or to electrify. But I'm really excited that Kevin passed the mic to you all, because I want to talk to you all about how we're going to get there. Excellent.
Thank you so much for that question. Could you just I wanted to just open that up to anyone else in the audience. I've appreciated you mentioning the company you're with, because it helps identify that perspective. Anyone else who'd like to chime in? The story in the back here.
Hi, I'm Pascal Joly. I'm a sustainability consultant. And I had a question about your the way you're going to achieve your target with company travels. So that are you purchasing carbon offsets? And if yes, what is your strategy around carbon offsets?
Sure. I can't talk about any one specific company, but yes, we are seeing a lot of carbon offsets being purchased to cover employee travel. It's also one of those areas that we're really trying to understand the data better through our inventories right now. I think that's all I can say for my companies.
Yes, we do purchase high-quality verified carbon reduction offsets. That's one of the strategy we apply to achieve carbon neutrality claims. So first of all, how we achieve carbon neutrality is that we try our best, prioritize reducing emissions as much as we can, as fast as we can, and we use high-quality and verified carbon credits to offset the residual emissions. I think there are definitely lots of critiques and issues and concerns around the carbon market, right? Around verifiability, measurement, permanence, integrity, all of those. But I believe that just thinking about the approach here, right? That we have carbon reduction offsets, carbon removal, et cetera. I think all of them are valid approaches, right? For us to save the planet. But I think definitely those the carbon market needs us to help to mature so they can be more effective, more scalable and trusted in order to deliver the impact that we need for the net zero transition.
And while we're a small team, I want to broaden that kind of question a little bit and make a shameless plug for one of our portfolio companies, which is called Abatable. They provide a platform where you can, for larger, more corporate buyers, can get verified high-quality carbon offsets. So I think there's a lot of innovation going on in this space, but also just bringing new sources of offsets to the market and making sure those are actually high quality and not just some kind of scam.
Terrific. Anyone else? All right, we're good. Thank you so much to our panel. Let's give it one more round of applause. Just want to make a note to our attendees in the back there. There are seats available up front. Feel free to come up. We welcome you to have a seat and make yourself comfortable. So just want to offer that to our guests. All right. So it's an exciting time to be able to introduce our second keynote speaker, Ben Hertz-Shargel. Mr. Hertz-Shargel is the global head of Grid Edge at Wood Mackenzie. I would like to get a show of hands of how many people here know the concept of Grid Edge. Have any of you heard of it? Got a few. Terrific. So I just want to touch on this. Grid Edge is a distributed software, hardware, and business innovation series that exist in proximity to the end user. In short, think of behind-the-meter technologies. And Ben has been leading research across electrification, grid digitization, distributed energy resources, and flexibility in electricity markets. He's an industry expert, all the way from New York City. And he looks at the intersection between advanced energy technology and energy markets, leading us to a decarbonization of the power system. Today, he'll address the startup business opportunities for behind-the-meter technologies. Let's give a warm welcome to Ben.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here today. I really want to thank Energy Innovation Network and Plug and Play for the opportunity to be here, particularly Wade for the original invitation. Thank you, Wade. I also just want to echo the remarks made before, very mindful of some of the shocks that have hit the system over the last week from SVB and then the extreme weather and the flooding that's happened here. So I hope everybody, your families and your organizations are kind of bearing both of these storms. So I do want to talk today about opportunities for startups and innovation at the grid edge. So let's get into what we just started hearing about. What do I mean by grid edge? And this is actually a term that was coined by my predecessors at Wood Mackenzie a few years ago. It really sits at the intersection of these four areas, which are all areas that my research team covers. There's general distributed energy resources. This could be behind-the-meter storage, demand response, microgrids, but specifically electrification technologies. So think heat pumps and EV charging. Then you have the energy markets where these assets can be monetized, and this includes in utility programs. And finally, we have the technologies that utilities are deploying to manage this increasingly decentralized, digitalized technologies that consumers are adopting. So I want to kind of focus primarily on EV charging because I think it's one of the most exciting and high growth areas. And to start with this slide, because while I'm sure it's hard to read, it gives you a sense of the ecosystem specifically within public EV charging. So this is not fleet charging, it's not resi. So at first impression might be this is a pretty big space. There's a lot of companies here. When you think a little bit harder, you realize there's a lot of room here for growth. This is a market, EV charging in general, that we're forecasting to reach $10 billion by 2026. So rapid growth, and it's going to just kind of skyrocket after that. There is a lot of room in all of these market segments for new startups to enter. And I think it's really funny that, let's see, where's the, is there a pointer on this? No pointer. Oh, there's no pointer, okay. I want to highlight this company right here, which was plugged by Carolyn a few minutes ago. Her portfolio company, Charger Help, is the only company that we identified specializing in the maintenance of EV charging networks. And I think that's relevant because this category, a study was done recently that showed that the uptime of charging networks in California was around 72%, which is pretty abysmal, and it's just a lousy experience for customers. Utilities from California to New York are requiring upwards of 97% uptime, as is the federal government to access NEVI funding, which is $5 billion. So the stakes are much higher, the bar is much higher. And so we're going to need much more rapid response maintenance and potentially financial products to protect charger station owners. So this is definitely some white space for companies to enter. If we look at VC investment in EV charging recently, in fact, specifically last year, around 80% is going to the rollout of public EV charging networks, charging networks in general. And this is really going, the lion's share, to two segments. The kind of pure play networks here, which are, think of your EVgo, Electrify America, Flow, and then the turnkey network providers, which is kind of this category here. This is your EV Connect, your PowerFlex, Shell Recharge. These are companies who don't own charging stations. What they do is they develop them and then sell them or operate them and sell a subscription to a site host. Now, why is this area so in demand and getting so much funding when it's so profoundly unprofitable right now? And there are two reasons. The first is that there's a land grab going on of companies looking to access to sites that are going to be important for market share in the future, either based on the proximity, kind of convenience for drivers, or because of proximity to a utility substation to ensure that they have access to the power needs that it's going to be critical to interconnect. But the other reason is because large corporates are increasingly looking to get into EV charging inorganically. And EV charging represents a new type of infrastructure, which a lot of companies from various spaces are looking to be exposed to. It's really their way into this new energy ecosystem. And so that spans kind of legacy power infrastructure developers like LS Power and Schneider Electric, as well as oil and gas majors like Shell and BP, who are looking to diversify their asset portfolios and their line of services, again, in order to kind of be relevant and to grow into this new energy economy. Now, anyone looking to enter into EV charging networks are going to face stiff competition from utilities. So utilities in at least 16 US states are or are trying to develop their own charging networks. And they have significant advantages in many cases because of their regulated businesses, being able to reutilize certain kind of human and other resources that they may have to deploy to the rollout of these networks as well as their core operations. So that is one key pressure that you will face entering this market. And this last transaction here shows another. So Volta was one of the real innovators in EV charging, in really coming to market with a big screen attached to their chargers to layer advertising revenue onto the general sale of electricity. But they sold at, I believe, 8% of their SPAC valuation. So it really shows you the punishing level of the economics of EV charging. Now, there are kind of two reasons, I think, to highlight as to where these challenges lie. There's the revenue side, which is that utilization has yet to really emerge. These are companies investing in this infrastructure, knowing that the EV wave has yet to, truly land. And so the charging isn't there, so the revenue isn't there. But the other key piece of it is on the cost side. And it really comes down to what are called demand charges. Now, most of you probably are familiar with this. I will briefly describe. Demand charges are the portion of a customer's bill, of a commercial customer's bill, that are based on peak energy demand in a given month, and often as brief a window as a 15-minute interval. So that biggest draw you have during the month determines a significant fraction of your bill. And if you look at this figure on the left, you see that for stations that have charger ratings above 150 kW, which is going to be table stakes going forward, the share of your operating expenses of a charging station due to demand charges lies between around 50% and above 80% of your bill. So this is a massive cost driver and something that you need to solve for. But charging station operators today largely are just beginning to use on-site energy management to deal with this problem. And the way that you deal with it is kind of illustrated by this diagram here. You essentially try to shift load using on-site generation or storage and software smarts to shift load without impacting the customer kind of dramatically, so that you end up with a lower peak demand. And this not only reduces your demand charge, but it crucially reduces the cost and the time it takes to interconnect your project to the grid, which is one of the pain points of developing a charging station. There are a number of startups that have emerged to try to tackle this problem. ChargeNet is one of them, which works with, uses on-site solar and storage to mitigate charging demand, and it's working with Taco Bell across California. Another company is Beam. They have an integrated solution where they embed a storage and an EV charger within a solar canopy, which is totally off-grid, so there's no interconnection, there's no permitting, and it's transportable. And there's another success story of a company called PowerFlex that was acquired by EDF Renewables in 2019 that came out of Caltech. So they have some sophisticated software solutions for managing EV charging load to achieve this. So yeah, there's a bunch of success stories, but there's a lot of opportunity for new companies looking to address this really critical problem that's going to be pervasive across all EV charging. And I want to emphasize it's not just kind of these public chargers that have this problem. The coming commercial EV charging is going to face it as well. So if you look at electric, medium, and heavy-duty trucks, these are typically 30% cheaper in terms of total cost of ownership compared to their diesel counterparts. And when you layer on state and federal incentives, there's a real value proposition for fleet operators. But electrification is challenging, and it requires a tremendous capital investment up front. It also requires kind of managing and understanding some pretty complex state and federal incentive programs. And it involves a very different paradigm in terms of refueling as well as maintenance. And so it turns out that close to 80% of commercial vehicles in California are in small fleets of under 100 vehicles. So these fleet operators are not in a position to have the resources or the sophistication to be able to handle all of these complexities. And so startups have come to the fore to offer what is essentially 3 types of service models to help fleet operators transition. So the first is called charging as a service. And this is basically where one of these providers will come and they will develop and they will operate and they will own charging equipment at your fleet site and sell you a subscription to use it, kind of a simple monthly payment. But the companies that are doing this actually prefer a different model, which is more capitally efficient, which is to centralize all of this infrastructure at a depot that they own and operate, and then sell a subscription to fleet operators to come use their central facility. And so this is referred to as depot as a service. Now, the same companies are realizing that in the near term, these vehicles are very expensive. They tend to be around 3 times more expensive than their diesel counterparts. And so in order to get these first customers on board, they often need to offer the vehicles themselves as part of the bundle. So you get the vehicles and you get the charging infrastructure. And this is called fleet as a service. It can't be overestimated the requirement of partnerships in doing this. So number one, you have the massive capital investment to purchase all of this equipment. That requires financing partners, either to kind of keep these assets on their balance sheet or to structure it and sell it off, as happens in residential solar today. Also, kind of importantly, one of the key incentives for EV charging is the ITC that was strengthened in the recent IRA bill. And so startups, of course, don't really have a tax liability, so they're not able to monetize the ITC. They need financing partners who can do this, or dedicated tax equity. And tax equity partners are very hard for these kind of very bespoke type of deals. So this is a real challenge. And other partners that are important, if you are trying to go out and build a depot in critical locations, it's good to have a real estate partner. And so a key example here is CBRE, where they are working with a company called Forum Mobility, which is one of the early startup leaders in this space, to identify and then procure sites that are relevant for these depots. So far we've talked about kind of deploying and operating EV charging equipment. I want to talk a little bit about monetizing it. So we just completed a study on virtual power plants in North America. We built a data set of over 500 projects on which it was based, and published a report to clients a few weeks ago. And actually, you can look out for an opinion I'm having in Utility Dive in the next couple days. So one important way of looking at the data is by technology. And so if you look at the number of projects, of virtual power plant projects, utilizing different technologies, you see that smart thermostats kind of unsurprisingly lead the pack because of a long history of utilization and utility HVAC or demand response programs. And battery storage, pretty impressively, is catching up in a relatively short time frame. So this is, and it's also across different classes, across residential customer segments and also C&I. But EV charging is really lagging behind. Oh, this kind of went a little too far, or whatever. So EV charging is lagging behind battery storage. So there's really an opportunity for companies to come and bring EV loads into to utilities into markets. And in particular, C&I, which is commercial charging, which is really not being utilized, not being monetized in this way. And so we can unpack that by looking at this figure to the right, which is showing the primary services provided by virtual power plants that incorporate EV charging. And so we break it down here first by kind of California and non-California, which is a very important lens that you need to bring to anything involving DERs or virtual power plants. Things are very different in California. And then by the type of service that is provided. Is it a service to the utility, like peak shaving, or is it a market service provided to a wholesale market, either energy or capacity or ancillary services? And so what you see is in California, there's a very healthy balance between utility and market services, and it involves all customer segments, both resi and commercial. Outside of California, it's a very different bag. The lion's share of VPPs are providing utility services, and primarily through residential chargers. This is basically utilities helping to get level 2 chargers into customers' hands and then enrolling them into existing DR programs alongside other types of technologies. There is very little happening with market services. So very few companies are bringing EV loads to wholesale markets. And on an absolute scale, C&I, again, very little commercial charging. And now, of course, commercial charging is very new, so it's unsurprising that there's not much there. But it shows you that this is an opportunity for growth, and so plenty of opportunity for startups to come in. I want to now talk about the integration within the grid edge space. So focusing on this figure to the left, the column, the kind of y-axis of this figure are what we call DER platforms. So these are companies that directly control individual DERs, either because they work directly with an OEM, like maybe Sonova talking to a battery OEM, or you are the OEM, and think Google with Nest thermostats. And then the x-axis is our virtual power plant operators, who are the companies who partner with DER platforms and who basically aggregate their customers and bring them to utilities into markets. There's a green dot if there is a partnership or an integration, between these two companies. And so what you can see here emerge is there are some, some vertical and horizontal lines of some densely connected companies, but generally there's a lot of white space. And because typically most off-takers of VPP services only work with a small number or even a single VPP operator, white space means you have customers who have invested in DERs who cannot monetize them. So there's a big kind of economic inefficiency here. A couple startup companies have come in here to try to address this challenge. It's Leap and Recurve, and they offer what's known as what they call a flexibility market, essentially a sort of platform that makes it easier for DER platforms to connect into them, and then they can kind of like make it easier to access customers on the other side and kind of deal with that complexity. But just two companies, there's a lot of room to play in that space. And I think it's worth kind of comparing to this picture, which comes from the e-mobility side. So the X and the Y axes of this figure are the same. They are what's called e-mobility service providers, which you can think of as the middleware within a public EV charging network. They're the software that lets your app find a charging station and get billed and let you get billed for a transaction that you might have, sometimes without even doing anything on your phone, simply by plugging in. So there are around 73 public EV charging networks in the US today. We expect there to be closer to 300 to 500 by the time the market matures. That's closer to the number that exists in Europe today, which is ahead of us, but it's also very fragmented. As you start to grow the number of charging networks, it becomes increasingly critical that a customer of network A can access the stations of network B. Otherwise, you're going to see an increasingly shrinking set of total stations out there. So a blue square here represents a bilateral roaming agreement between two different charging networks. This is an arrangement that allows you, A, to see stations from company B. So not too many of these. The green boxes represent roaming agreements or roaming integrations through a different type of model called the hub model. And so there is a company called ChargeHub that essentially acts as a hub in which everybody integrates into them and signs terms with them and then can access everybody else in that network. And that has enabled very widespread connectivity between these charging networks. Now, there's a little bit of kind of skepticism as to what degree this will hold in the US in the way that it holds in Europe under another company called Hubject there. And that's because there is a 5% surcharge generally when you go through a charge hub, which is shared between the hub provider and the EMSP and the charge point operator. So it's a little bit higher cost, and it may be that some of the larger charging networks end up having bilateral relationships with each other, and all the smaller networks that emerge will go through a hub. But I just think it's really interesting to see how this newer space essentially has been more successful early on than the much longer standing general kind of DER virtual power plant space, and potentially this model could be ported over to there. Oh, I'm really losing time. One kind of maybe final point I'll make is around here. Retail electricity. There's a real opportunity for retail competitive suppliers to leverage virtual power plants. And the reason is because every kilowatt that is saved by a customer is monetized by that customer's market revenue, let's say through demand response, is implicitly reducing the exposure of their supplier, who may not be their utility, in terms of paying a peak energy price, paying transmission charges and capacity charges, which are really material costs. And so we've seen the large incumbent retailers working with VPP partners to try to create offerings for customers. These offerings can be much more sticky and kind of retain customers better, and they also help differentiate. But not a lot of innovation has happened. They're still searching for, what is that kind of killer offering? And it's allowed disruptors to come in who really are marrying together DER flexibility with supply offerings to bring more to the customer. And this is all happening in Texas. And actually, since I produced this slide, another company has come in, which is a partnership between David Energy, which is a startup retailer out of Brooklyn, and Sonova. And they're also trying to take advantage of a new pilot in ERCOT for behind-the-meter batteries, essentially, to support that. So a lot of opportunity for new companies to come into retail and to marry DER flexibility. I have more content. Be happy to chat with you guys at the social hour if you want to hear more. But thank you.
Ben, thank you so much. All right. Well, that was the opportunity for startups is really clear with your presentation. I'd like to hear from the audience. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hands and we'll bring the mic over. We have a gentleman in the back.
Sorry, naive question. What's a virtual power plant?
That's an excellent question. And in fact, we found very different responses from people in the industry. People tend to define the VPPs either offensively to say that kind of like you're not a VPP, or defensively say we are a VPP. And some, for instance, include energy efficiency. Others on the other end of the spectrum say you need to be like at the scale of a true power plant and offer a whole range of services. The way we defined it is essentially you're a set of non-electrically co-located resources behind multiple meters. You need to present yourself as one sort of resource to a market or to a utility, and you need to be dispatchable. There aren't too many qualifications beyond that, but that does rule out certain types of entities. And it's fairly accommodating of different players who, even if you are, for instance, weather dependent in terms of your capacity, you still count as a VPP if you have an all-call instruction, for instance.
Excellent. Any others in the audience? We've got two hands in the back. There.
Hi, Christopher, formerly a CEO of a company that went through plug and play, Blue Planet Energy. So my take on grid edge, a little informed by that, where we looked at grid edge as kind of like the actual edge of the grid, where it's very expensive to extend the grid. And as we expand into more rural areas or need more service out there, our non-wires alternatives might be more cost effective. And I think we might have skipped over a slide there on microgrids or something, but maybe you could just speak a little bit to that aspect of grid edge in terms of the opportunities and what you're seeing as emerging today.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't have any microgrid specific content here, but we do cover that. We have a huge database actually of microgrid projects. So one, I think, interesting trend is utilities offering resilience as a service, where they are finding areas of their territory that are expensive to roll poles and wires or to maintain them. And so they are deploying behind-the-meter storage, for instance, at customers and using that as a kind of local surgical resource. And they get to capitalize it often. So it's a way of kind of, it is a form of non-wire alternative, and it lets them deal with these kind of hard-to-reach areas. I think also here in California, there's so many different kind of procurement opportunities that are regulator-driven that are funding VPP operations. Some dealing with Aliso Canyon, some dealing with just local capacity, local flexible capacity that's needed. So I think NWAs are critical for surgically deploying VPPs. I think there's been a challenge in making it scalable, and kind of there's so much friction in kind of doing the procurement, doing the RFP process. Being a company who's dependent on that kind of revenue stream is challenging, as maybe you know. So I think then you have the really important distribution infrastructure deferral framework here in California that requires the IOUs to look for an NWA essentially opportunity before deploying capital. So I think that's another kind of really important mechanism that can try to force NWAs where they really would be more efficient, but the utility may be less inclined to do it on their own.
There was just one last hand up. I want to honor that.
Hi, just wanted to ask you about the interplay between the EVs being used for energy storage versus stationary storage that are non-EV based. Is there a market going one way or the other, or is there even a market for stationary energy storage, especially if EVs can be used as VPPs?
Yeah, it's a good question. So certainly there is a market for stationary storage, and there will be. Commercial storage is very much lagging. So resi storage and grid scale are really taking off. Commercial is lagging behind. I think, some people look at the total capacity forecasted for EV, for, storage within EVs and say, why do you need stationary storage? It's so massive. I do think that the charging patterns of users is going to be is an unknown. And so you can't quite count on that kind of, let alone calling it firm capacity or firm storage that you would get from stationary storage in EVs. So I think for the near future, people were counting on there being dedicated grid supporting storage, playing different kinds of roles. EVs will be kind of like increasingly dialed in as they are able. But right now, for instance, in residential storage, in residential EV charging, utilities get very little capacity from these chargers to do demand response. If you call an event from 4 to 6 p.m., there aren't that many chargers plugged in, and those that are plugged in, they amount to a small fraction of what you would get, not even what you get from a smart thermostat. So there aren't necessarily great resources. It depends on the use case. As they are really scaled, as you have more workplace charging, you have way more kind of fleet EV charging, and with these massive depots that have significant energy and very sophisticated operations, it's much more easy to see kind of regular load shifting and participating in that way. But I think it'd be very speculative to think that EVs, despite their magnitude, are going to be able to displace grid scale storage.
Excellent. Let's give one more round of applause for Ben here. Thank you so much. Yes. All right, get ready for some high momentum here. We've got 10 startups lined up. And there's 3 categories that are going to be covered here: clean energy, sustainability and environmental impact, and supply chain logistics. So let's get to it. Our first startup is EarthNen. EarthNen works on technology to provide a carbon negative, climate positive, long duration energy storage solution. I work in a solar farm industry, and we are embedding more and more storage solutions. So obviously, this is very relevant. I'm excited to hear and bring up Karthi, co-founder of EarthNen. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Karthi Chakravarti. I'm the COO and one of 3 founders here at EarthNen, where we're enabling renewable energy 24/7 for a decarbonized Earth using energy storage. Now, everybody knows the need for energy storage, so I'm not really going to go into detail on that. But if you look at the problem on the right, now the energy storage market is extremely fragmented, with so many different solutions good for different megawatt and megawatt hour capacities. And when we talk to customers, namely utility providers, this is a huge problem for them, because customers state needing energy storage with duration that can vary with their growth. Something that can handle 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours today, and grow into 10, 12, so on and so forth into the future. Additionally, current storage solutions like lithium-ion batteries, compressed air, gravity-based, or even flow batteries are all very expensive. They're hard to scale due to the material and land constraints, especially now with the supply chain constraints going on. They're carbon positive, and since the majority of technologies that exist today are battery-based technologies, they all suffer from heat or cycle-based degradation. Additionally, lithium-ion batteries are exploding left and right. The numbers and pictures speak for themselves. So as a result, what we've done is we've created a new class of energy storage. We call it the hybrid thermomechanical energy storage. How it works is we take excess electricity from the grid that's used to run a compressor where we compress carbon dioxide to the supercritical state stored in this highly pressurized tank. Now that compression cycle is also an exothermic reaction, so we capture and we store that heat in a thermal energy storage unit. Thus, we're storing energy two ways, thermally and mechanically. Now, when you need the stored energy turned into electricity, it runs through our turbines, specifically a gas expansion and an impulse turbine, to release electricity back at 70% efficiency. Now, we have a very cost-effective solution. This is also extremely scalable because we're taking off-the-shelf items, and this is not battery-based technology, so it won't degrade from heat or cycles. And this is shipped straight to our customer premises, which is great because customers really like that, because this is shipped back on the back of a flatbed truck, and when customers get it, they just hook it up and it's good to go. It's a 10 megawatt hour system, fits in a 40-foot shipping container. And this technology is also patented. Now, why customers really like us is because of this. So our technology can do anywhere from 4 to over 100 hours. But we have our energy and power units decoupled, which means we can be the supplier for our customers today and into the future. We can be future-proof for them. So let's say a customer comes to us today and they say they want 6 hours of storage. Now we can give them a configuration that meets that. Now 2 years down the line, they say, hey, I actually want to increase to 10 hours of storage without increasing my megawatts. It's simply selling them additional energy units. And since our systems use carbon dioxide in a closed loop, this is also a hardcore sequestration application as well. Now the markets, as you can imagine, are extremely large. What we're really focusing on today is the European, American, East Asian market, which is about $100 billion. In terms of our business model, how we make money. Now, we built 3 product lines, specifically a 100 kilowatt system, a 1 megawatt system, and a 10 to 20 megawatt system. The 100 kilowatt system is going to be great for C&I customers, microgrids, and EV charging stations. That 1 megawatt system for the larger C&I customers, larger EV charging stations, and solar and wind farm owners. And then the 10 to 20 megawatt system is for utility providers. We're also building a B2B edge SaaS platform that's going to use AI and machine learning to optimize peak demand pricing, enable grid resiliency with our storage assets, and increase the grid cybersecurity. Now, as I mentioned, this is a hardcore carbon sequestration. So what we're building is a strong energy storage solution that also happens to sequester CO2. And by 2030, when we deploy 1,000 units for 1 terawatt hours of energy storage, that'll be sequestering a lot of CO2. Specifically by 2050, when we do 9.1 gigatons of CO2, that will account for about 20% of the global projected emissions by 2050. Now, in terms of traction, where we are today, so we're building our prototypes, and that will be complete in a month, and that will allow us to raise a seed round in which we've already identified our lead investor, which is most probably going to be Saudi Aramco. That will allow us to build our larger prototypes with EPRI. You guys are familiar with EPRI? EPRI is exclusively partnering with us, and they're helping us by 2 ways. Number one, they're helping us build our systems either in their Knoxville or North Carolina labs, in which we both have 2 separate anchor customers and pilots already lined up. And additionally, EPRI is also serving as a channel partner down the line with opening all their partners up to us, which are all our customers. And EPRI is also exclusively grant writing on our behalf for the upcoming DOE IJA storage grant. Now, we filed for a lot more grants since then, DOD and a couple of DOE. We have over $2 billion in support letters and LOIs, and this doesn't include any of the anchor pilots we just talked about. Most recently, we also just won the most promising startup again last week at the Rice Alliance, so that's not updated here. And we're graduating through the DOE Impel program, and this technology is also vetted by the DOE. So I'm one of 3 founders. My other 2 founders are the technical guys. And we have a world-class team of advisors, specifically with over 70 years of energy research experience and over 100 years of global operations and expansion experience. Thanks.
Thank you, Karthi. Our next startup is Epic Charging. Epic Charging is focused on creating EV fleet management software to accelerate transportation electrification. So let's give a warm welcome to Michael, chairman of Epic Charging.
Good evening. I'm Michael Bakunin, the chairman and co-founder of Epic Charging. I've been in this industry, actually e-mobility since 2012 when I joined Nissan back then. And I worked on a number of EV technologies in Europe, in Japan, and more recently in the United States, including charging, vehicle-to-grid, second life batteries, electric vehicle car sharing, and my last project with Nissan was actually the autonomous drive partnership with Waymo. At the end of 2021, I decided to co-found Epic Charging, and as you realized, we actually sponsored one of the sessions before, so I have a much easier job to do right now. So Epic Charging has a team of experts and actually veterans in the mobility space, but also in the energy space. Companies like Nissan, Daimler, XL Fleet. Justin Ashton was the co-founder of XL Fleet, one of the famous companies in this space. Russell Vare worked for Nissan, Daimler, and Nuvi. And the rest of the team is really, really helping us to move the needle. So what are we facing and what we are trying to solve? So first of all, to move faster to clean mobility, to zero-emission transportation, we need to solve three big problems. First one is diverse, really different types of hardware, I mean, on the wheels and with cables, so chargers and electric vehicles. The second one is the problem with actually closed networks, and we spoke about that a little bit earlier, but essentially we cannot move forward too fast if we have those limitations, if we need to talk about roaming, if we need to talk about interconnections. And the third one is actually the outdated software. You would want to think that, you know, EV technology is new, everything is nice and shiny. No, the answer is no. We need to actually come up with new generation of software. So our mission is simple: simplify transportation for everyone. And how we get there, essentially our mission is to create an Android for charging networks and electric vehicles. But that's our mission. That's 2030 maybe. But as of today, right now, we already have a solution which is called Software as a Service. It's an operating system for electric vehicles and charging networks. And we have an offer which is available today to our customers. We started deploying in December. So the team is mostly based in California. So I'm here in Menlo Park. The co-founders are in the Silicon Valley. And California is obviously our market number one. It's huge. There is a lot of public funding available. So California secured enough funding by 2025 for 250,000 chargers and up to 1.2 million by 2030. California is our core market, but not the only one. We are partnering with developers and construction firms in Texas and Florida, and planning also to go to New York and Massachusetts. This is what we have. It's software as a service. We started with fleets, but we quickly realized there is a need for fleet owners to actually offer charging solutions to public, to increase utilization, but also to be compliant with the funding requirements. So if you just keep your charger behind the fence and only use it for your fleets, for your employees, you won't be necessarily able to access the funding. So we realized that we can actually come up with some hybrid solutions where you can offer charging for your employees, for your drivers, but also for any public users. With that solution, we are going to market right now. We're addressing a lot of RFPs in California, Florida, and Texas, as I said, and we cover two elements of the full value chain, which is actually the software, and we white labeled some chargers from China. So we've done a lot of work with firmware. We certify the chargers, UL, Energy Star. We put those chargers on ELP list, on South California Edison list, and other lists. So we have a seat around the table when we are facing customers like that. And we partner with developers and construction firms to be able to offer a turnkey solution. This is our payment feature. This is how it works. It's simple. It's app-free. It's open network. Essentially, you can scan the QR code and you can land on a Safari page or Chrome page, and you can double-click Apple Pay or Google Pay, or use your credit card, and the transaction is started, and then your car is charging. At the same time, you can give RFID cards to your drivers and employees, and you can have different tariffs, and you can have everything in one place, which makes our solution quite unique today, and this is how we are different compared to other networks and other players in this segment. I think being open network, app-free, gives us an advantage. We see this requirement all over the place in the RFPs, and I think the governmental funding will be going into that direction. You should not lock your customers into your own network. I think this is the requirement of today. Our go-to-market strategy, so obviously we work with partners. We have 4 partners, sales channel partners today, including companies like Mobility House and EVCS, who are also offering this type of services like charging. You would say, hey, charging, why would we need to work with you? But we have some unique solutions, including specialization on fleets and payments that they don't have, so we partner. We also work directly with end customers. A school district here in San Jose is a good example. And we work really closely with OEMs. Evo Electric is the best example. Class 6 trucks, electrified Isuzu. We integrate on the telematics level. We pull data from the vehicles, and we do a lot of services related to fleet management too. This is our roadmap for this year. We've implemented payments. We have site load management. The next interesting feature, which will be out there in April, is Take EV Home. We are targeting, smaller fleets, but also lighter vehicles like pickup trucks. You won't want them to charge in a depot, so you want to take them home. How are you going to manage all this ecosystem? We have a solution for that. And number 4 is an example of our work with a truck maker. So dedicated roadmaps. We have really specific features for servicing, state of health, state of charge, anything related to electric vehicle operations. So we are fundraising, looking for partners. I'm here to say hello. That in the corner is our small high table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Our third startup, CFEX, the Carbon-Free Energy Cloud, is a service that helps renewable energy buyers and sellers streamline their scope 2 carbon accounting and back office operations for clean energy procurements. Please join me in giving a great welcome to Marek, co-founder of CFEX.
Thank you. Is this the clicker? Hi, my name is Marek Zong, and I'll take you through CFEX, the Enterprise Scope 2 Decarbonization Platform. So, a quick greatest hits of CFEX information. We're the industry's first cloud-based turnkey Scope 2 decarbonization platform. We enable enterprises to track, plan, and reduce their Scope 2 carbon emissions. We're run by a world-class team with deep industry experience. I'll get into that on the next slide. And we released the first version of our product late last year. This includes the industry's first PPA contract rule engine technology. We're currently in the middle of piloting several projects with blue chip customers, and we've already received $1.5 million of seed funding from the co-founder and CEO of OSI. We're currently seeking $2 million in convertible notes, 500,000 of which we've already been committed. And I want to mention 2 items that are not on this slide. We were just recently accepted to the A-Core Accelerate program, as well as the 3rd cohort of the AWS Clean Energy Accelerator. Our team has done this before. So our team has worked together for 10 years, developing a very similar solution in the utility space. We saw this new opportunity coming out for enterprise sustainability. We decided to start a new company, repurpose our technology, build it from the bottom up, and reapply this to enterprise Scope 2 decarbonization. Let me take you through how we see the world. Enterprises have multiple sources of load and supply. They might receive gray energy from their local utility. They might receive green energy from their renewable energy suppliers, or claims to renewable energy through REC contracts or the EAC market. Underlying each of these sources of supply is a contract, whether it's a retail tariff or green tariff from the utility, a power purchase agreement from the renewable energy supplier, or a REC contract from a bilateral or the EAC markets. Our system integrates with each of these meter data sources on an interval level bringing in that interval level data to then calculate their Scope 2 carbon emissions, as well as manage each of these contracts and streamline the back office operations. We see several challenges from the customers that we're talking to, most of them revolving around manual processes. We see operational data challenges with tracking Scope 2 emissions. Most of our customers have teams that are manually going through each of their utility invoices and writing down the numbers from there. And this is leading to poor accuracy, transparency, and auditability in their Scope 2 carbon accounting. We also see operational challenges for the clean energy procurements, including all back office operations such as PPA contract management, daily contract settlement, and monthly billing. I want to call out the SEC, one of the SEC commissioners last year. They did an analysis and they said that including climate disclosures for companies is going to cost an extra $1.5 to $2 million per business, depending on how much they're paying their consultants. To address these challenges, we have 3 products: meter to carbon, meter to cash, and meter to cost. Underlying each of these 3 products is our meter data management system, where we integrate with interval level meter data. Our meter to carbon system is our Scope 2 counting our carbon software. Our meter to cash system is our transaction platform, where we manage PPA contracts as well as other supply contracts and facilitate the billing, settlement, and reconciliation. For meter to cost, we perform what-if carbon and cost simulations so that corporations can make the most intelligent buying and purchasing decisions. I mentioned we were a turnkey solution. Here's the turnkey. Starting at the top of the circle, we baseline company Scope 2 emissions. Moving over to the right, we plan and simulate mitigation strategies based on hypothetical generation data built by models in our product. We can help negotiate these supply contracts, particularly PPA contracts, by tweaking certain contractual parameters inside of our contract rule engine. And then we can streamline back office operations by performing the invoicing, bill reconciliation, and daily and weekly settlement. And finally, we're able to evaluate the performance. We can calculate how your PPA is performing against, compared to base level utility energy. And finally, I think I'm running out of time. So this is our competitive landscape. Basically, we're not just a reporting company, but a decarbonization company. Reporting companies seem to be popping up a dime a dozen. We are fully decarbonizing enterprises' Scope 2 operations. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. Our 4th startup is FlexiDAO. FlexiDAO is a software platform that uses blockchain technology to certify and trace electricity from production to consumption, to enable credible and verifiable claims on its carbon footprint every hour of the day. We had a panel discussion up here talking about verification. This should be fascinating. All right, let's put our hands together for Paul, Vice President of FlexiDAO.
Great, thanks, Kevin. So Paul Bressel with FlexiDAO. So we are much more of a commercial deck here. We raised the Series A few months ago, and we'll be looking for a Series B till probably mid next year or so. It was led by Microsoft and Google and some European investors. So if you are in the business of buying energy, of ESG reporting, if you are a seller of energy and or a broker or advisor in the space, please come find me. Let's see, how do we click forward? Green button. Perfect. So obviously there's lots of challenges going on. I think everybody's familiar with these. I don't need to go into them too much, but it's definitely on both sides of the green, whether it's on the ESG side or on the cost side. And of course, that means there's lots of opportunities. And that cost, obviously is most important. So I think a lot of people are more and more focused on that these days, but being able to also think about both the marketing aspects and the ESG aspects. So lots of opportunities there. In terms of market context, I think some people in the room are probably familiar with 24/7 carbon-free energy, the concept of having hourly RECs. Simply put, there's a huge pull to be able to take that granular data, to be able to use it for emissions reporting, whether it's using REC constructs or emissions, to be able to really prove that and certify that, as Kevin just mentioned. So there's a lot of corporates that are on the buying side. There's a lot of governments, even U.S. government said by the end of this decade, half of their purchases are going to be thinking about carbon-free energy on an hourly basis. And then there's also a lot of standards that are changing, including a lot of the greenhouse gas protocol, which is very likely to change in this direction. And so there's a huge pull in that direction. So a lot of people are very interested in how you can actually get carbon-free energy on an hourly basis when the wind and the solar aren't producing. And that's something which, thinking about that from a certification perspective and being able to measure it extremely granularly. And so, for instance, if you have a solar PPA and during the middle of the day you have green production, that's great. Of course, at the end of the day, even if you are 100% offset on an annual basis, that doesn't mean that you're actually completely carbon-free, because every single night you're actually being powered by brown power. So how can you think about that more thoughtfully in the procurement? So what we're seeing is all the corporates that are now looking to procure are thinking more thoughtfully about what are the actual emissions associated with that. So their supply chain, if they want to green it, they need to actually reduce and to buy green electrons and think about that on an hourly basis, and also the emissions that they're doing, where and when they actually produce and where they consume it. So that's what our company does, to be able to measure that data and put it together. So you could call it sort of a middleware of sorts, and pulling together a couple different types of data, which I'll mention. So what we are, more than anything else, is a decarbonization data supporting entity to support both the buyers and the sellers. I mentioned some of the groups that are involved in co-creating global standards. We're on the boards of groups like Energy Tag and other types of groups, working closely with GHG Protocol and updating that and others. And so I think that's a huge differentiator, because we're helping to actually create what that future is we're looking to do and to be a part of. Some of our customers I mentioned before, they're international buyers as well as retailers, and able to help not only to buy our solution, but also push it through to a lot of their channel partners. And right now we're very focused on this certification aspect, but as you can imagine, as we get more towards an hourly type of green energy procurement and selling, there's a huge transaction opportunity there. So the types of data that we're pulling in, it's that REC data, EAC, it's the consumption data, the production data, as well as the emissions data, and then being able to use that, whether it's for reporting. And a lot of people today are just getting their heads around what it means to be actually able to have Scope 2 reporting, but we're helping them to think more thoughtfully about their procurement, make better procurement decisions, which will result in lower exposure later. We can quantify that with them, and then also being able to help just as times are tougher, to be able to reduce costs on some of that data collection. So from a product standpoint, our operations product is very focused on all of that back house operations to be able to pull in the data. And then the front end, for a lot of the customers that are interested in being able to see that visualization, and then the granular certificates, the hourly RECs, being able to show what that looks like. And that's something which there's a unique opportunity there, as all the registries are starting to think about it, but you don't yet really have the capacity for being able to interact with customers on this. So from a product standpoint, you can see kind of a carbon-free energy dashboard. That's what it looks like. Gives a score to both the customers and the retailers that are supporting them. From an emissions standpoint, of course, this is what we're trying to go for. At the end of the day, is trying to get towards zero, and whether it's market-based or location-based, we support customers in their approaches. And then, of course, visualizations for folks that are interested in that. And if you're interested in more, please feel free to come find me. Our team is very focused on SaaS and all of the supporting blockchain behind it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate that. All right. I'd like to introduce our fifth startup, Meter Leader. Meter Leader is an online portal that offers online energy challenges integrated with real-time electricity data to motivate people to save energy. So please put your hands together. I'm excited to have Natalie, founder of Meter Leader. Just press the green button.
Okay, sounds great. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Zant, founder and CEO of Meter Leader. Wall Street is finally waking up to the threat of climate change. Investors are now making decisions based on ESG, and they expect companies to provide accurate metrics as to how they are reducing their carbon emissions. Unfortunately, utility stakeholders are facing some obstacles in meeting these demands. Multifamily buildings are now facing state-mandated carbon emission caps. However, most multifamily building owners don't even know how much total energy their building uses because meters are individually owned by tenants. Companies typically report carbon emissions from their job sites and office buildings on their ESG reports. However, in the post-COVID world, 74% of companies now have employees working from home. So these work-from-home employee emissions are not being properly accounted for right now. And cities have ambitious climate action plan goals and energy efficiency goals, but are struggling to accurately measure carbon emission reductions from their efforts. At the same time, utilities are seeking to grow their energy efficiency and electrification programs, and they're also seeking to engage or provide educational and engaging experiences to their customers, especially as it relates to incentives coming from the Inflation Reduction Act. So MeterLeader can solve each of these problems for both utilities and their stakeholders. Our platform gamifies saving energy in homes by using real-time utility data, electric and gas, and proven behavior science insights. We help companies engage with their employees or residents to reduce carbon emissions at home, and we enable those companies to accurately report those reductions for ESG purposes. You can think of us as being similar to like a corporate Fitbit challenge, but instead of steps, we're measuring kilowatt hours, therms, and the resulting carbon emission reductions. With our platform, users can track their daily energy use and carbon emissions. They can manage all of their utility accounts, whether electric or gas, in one convenient location. So you can think like mint.com, but for your utility accounts. They can receive recommended bite-sized energy-saving actions to help them save energy and money. And they can participate in challenges and see their energy use in comparison to their peers. If you add in a few prizes, social science research shows that these methods can achieve up to 27% in energy savings. Our platform is built to enable us to work with a wide variety of different partners, including utilities, cities, property management groups, building owners, companies, and really any sustainability champion at every level of society. We make money from both companies and utilities. Companies pay us a fee to engage with their employees or residents, reduce carbon emissions, and then provide that data reporting back to them. And in the future, as we increase our user base, we hope to work with utilities and get paid for the energy savings that we're able to generate. We're also currently exploring direct-to-consumer additional revenue streams through energy efficiency product advertisements and lead generation. We're currently targeting the corporate ESG market as well as the demand-side management energy efficiency market. And both of these markets are expected to quickly grow in the next 5 years as climate change moves to the forefront of political and business priorities. We compete directly with other companies who use real-time utility data and who seek to build engagement amongst their participants. However, we're different from our competitors in that we do not have any sort of hardware component, and we think our approach is a more holistic energy journey for customers as opposed to just being focused on an hourly demand response event. Our team is passionate about sustainability. I've implemented a number of energy efficiency programs for multiple utility clients when I was an energy efficiency consultant at ICF International. I also have experience leading large tech teams and developing enterprise scale phone applications when I was a Scrum Master at Nudesic. And my co-founder, Jolene Bloomfield, is a data scientist and theoretical physicist. We met about 15 years ago when we were students at Cornell University. So this past year, Meter Leader has gained increased traction. We've raised a total of $265,000 from Techstars, Lacey, and most recently Soft Tech Accelerator program. We've completed a pilot with US Green Building Council LA, and we're actually in the middle of running a pilot with a Fortune 500 company. We've integrated hourly electric, gas, and carbon emission data from 15 electric and gas utilities in 24 different states. We currently have over 400 users on our platform, and we're seeking to grow that number once we come out with our new phone application, as well as direct-to-consumer challenges launching this April. So we're currently seeking companies who have strong ESG goals and maybe a hybrid or remote workforce, also cities, as well as multifamily building owners who would be interested in partnering with us to run a pilot 3-month-long energy savings challenge. The objectives for this challenge would be gaining participation of about a total anywhere from between 50 to 5,000 participants, with the goal of achieving significant energy savings, measurable energy savings, as well as generating participant engagement through the experience. I'll also mention that we're seeking to raise a pre-seed round later this year as well. And so feel free to scan this QR code to find out if your company might be a good fit for doing a pilot with us, or come talk to me at my table. And with that, I'll just say, you know, what are we waiting for? Let's save energy together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. All right. Our sixth startup is Cloverly. Cloverly provides tools for businesses and organizations to achieve carbon neutrality by connecting online buyers to local, high-quality renewable energy through their sustainability as a service platform. I want to welcome Christy from Cloverly.
Hi, everyone. All right, I'm going to do something different. I would like to ask everybody in this room to stand up, please. We have been sitting for way too long, and everybody needs to stretch. So you're going to stretch while I introduce myself. So my name is Christy Gamble. I am the Director of Business Development with Cloverly. I'm also an athlete, which is why I really believe in taking care of the body. I actually competed to almost represent Canada at the Olympics last year in curling, believe it or not. There you go. Didn't make it though, it's fine. All right, so Cloverly was founded in 2018, and it has 30 employees right now. We're based in Atlanta, not me, obviously I'm Canadian, but we just finished a Series A round, and we intend to grow to 60 employees by the end of the year. So you can go ahead and sit down now. We know that limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is mission critical. We also know that we need carbon removal to do that. Now, carbon removal, in turn, requires a robust voluntary carbon market with widespread participation. And today, participating in the carbon market is very difficult for small to medium-sized businesses and consumers. And that's where Cloverly comes in. Cloverly is the technology-powered solution building a carbon marketplace with accessibility, transparency, and trust so that everybody can take part in delivering climate action. Now, purchasing carbon credits today is a really high friction kind of activity. Cloverly is building the infrastructure that eliminates that friction by seamlessly connecting the buyers and the sellers of carbon credits. We have been trusted already by over 200 companies, including those shown here, to help deliver on their climate initiatives. Did you know that there are over 7,600 carbon credit generating projects available today? This sounds like a really good thing, but it's actually part of the problem. While a carbon credit is defined as 1 metric ton of CO2 avoided or removed, there's actually, not all carbon credits are created equally. There's actually a huge discrepancy in the quality of these various kinds of credits. Cloverly has a team of climate scientists that are assessing all of the credits available across the voluntary carbon market and applying a really stringent set of quality and risk criteria to filter out the top 100 or so credits. We display those credits on our marketplace and provide comprehensive project information on those credits to empower buyers to make informed decisions. Cloverly partners with companies through 2 ways. We have an API technology that allows companies to build products that provide offsetting solutions for their clients. We also partner with companies to help them directly purchase carbon credits by curating customized portfolios. So if we want to look deeper at the carbon credit API itself, the API is a customizable, integratable solution that can be embedded into any kind of user workflow or digital product. Cloverly's API will calculate the carbon footprint of this digital product and, of any kind of activity, like a transaction or retail purchase, and provide an offsetting ability to neutralize that purchase. So all of this is customizable and embedded within the platforms themselves. So you can see an example of this right here where there's a use case from the transaction where a retail company has offered the user the ability to neutralize the carbon footprint of their activities, their purchasing activities from that previous month. If we want to look directly at the purchase of carbon credits, Cloverly provides portfolio advisory. So what we do is we will work with companies to curate best possible portfolios that have been customized for the types of co-benefits and preferences of the particular company in order to meet their ESG goals. And why purchase with Cloverly on the marketplace? Well, what it comes down to is Cloverly is providing a holistic market view. We are a third-party assessor to help curate portfolios that are based off of quality and risk factors that have been measured based off of real climate science. We're simplifying the buying experience, making a top customer experience, and ultimately being a trusted partner. So what we're doing is we are providing the expertise and doing the hard work so that our clients don't have to. We're here today seeking partnerships with small to medium-sized to enterprise-sized businesses who are looking to offset their own emissions through the purchase of carbon credits or build products to allow their customers, their business or consumer customers, to be able to neutralize their activities as well through carbon credits. Anyone that partners with Cloverly can have trust that their carbon investment is making a real climate impact. So with that, thank you very much for this opportunity to pitch to you today, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Christy. And that was a great way to get the body flowing after all of your good patience for being here. All right. Our next startup is Minus Materials. They are our 7th startup, and Minus Materials uses microalgae to produce CO2 storing biominerals for the cement and concrete industry. So let's put our hands together for Bonnet, Sarah, CEO at Minus Materials. The green button right there.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. I'm super excited to talk to you about Minus Materials and what we are building. So I'm Sarah. I'm CEO and co-founder of Minus. So we actually start with a really grand vision at Minus Materials. We envision a world where concrete as a building material is actually carbon storing rather than carbon emitting. As you may know, Portland cement production is currently accounting for 8% of global CO2 emissions, and we're only going to keep making and using more of it because it is holding up our infrastructure and civilization. So at Minus Materials, our strategy to get to this grand vision starts all the way at the beginning of the cement manufacturing process with the raw materials. So the principal raw material is limestone. So we used naturally calcifying microalgae to grow biorenewable carbon negative limestone. That is then a drop-in replacement in the Portland cement manufacturing supply chain. So what the solution really boils down to, what you want to think about it, is that we're re-envisioning the way that we source raw materials to make cement. So pretty much since the beginning of time, we've been quarrying, which made a whole lot of sense 6,000 years ago. Still works okay today. However, in order to make the 4.4 billion tons of Portland cement that we currently consume globally per year, we dig up more than 6 billion tons of limestone from limestone quarries, and we burn it in order to make Portland cement. So in that process, more than 2.5 billion tons of CO2 are emitted just due to the process chemical reactions of burning limestone to make calcium oxide. So CaCO3 becomes CaO, so you got to lose CO2. And right now, CO2 is going up into the atmosphere, it's accumulating, and it's exacerbating the effects of climate change. So we actually envision a renewable process where we grow a on-demand carbon negative biorenewable limestone that's chemically and physically identical to quarried limestone in the cement manufacturing process. Here's some better photos. So they're pretty cool to look at. They're like a golden color, the algae themselves. And then as they keep growing, they make these limestone shells. And so as they're growing and making limestone, the media starts to get a little more milky. And they continually grow and shed the shells, sort of like with humans, our nails and our hair. It's continually growing as a material. And so this is how we fit in. We really believe that in order to make a dent in such a can be very slow-moving industry. In order to make a dent, we really want to provide a drop-in replacement that doesn't change the process and doesn't change the final product of Portland cement. And so this is a basic material flow diagram for how Portland cement is made. So you see this is where we drop in here at the raw material level. And limestone is overwhelmingly the majority of the raw material that you use. So using our limestone, swapping the biorenewable limestone for quarried limestone has a huge impact on your CO2 emissions. And that's shown here on this graph. So also importantly about our solution is it's very versatile. So since we're making the raw materials, we can integrate it into the cement supply chain in numerous ways. So you see here the 60% reduction. That is implying that our limestone were swapped for your typical quarried limestone, changing nothing else in the process. So this is going to your local cement plant and just changing the input material, changing nothing else, using the same kiln, probably fired by coal or pet coke. You still see that 60% reduction off the top because we're neutralizing that calcination reaction that emits so much CO2. However, limestone is the gold standard raw material for Portland cement production. So even as we see awesome new innovations in the space coming online that I think have huge potential, like electric kilns, electrochemical processes that can occur at ambient temperature, even solar powered kilns I've seen, and just really high use of renewable materials is all compatible, stacks well, doesn't compete with our limestone. And then that gets you down to a carbon neutral Portland cement. And on top of that, stacking carbon capture utilization and storage gets you very comfortably to a carbon negative Portland cement. But all of these steps are very important, and importantly, they can be mixed and matched based on the CapEx that we're working with and the environment that we're working in. So we completed a pilot project with Microsoft last year. We poured a meter cubed of carbon negative concrete that went exceptionally well. They have a really big interest in decarbonizing concrete for their data center production. And when you think about all the great work you guys are doing on renewable energy, things like windmills and solar panels and all that, you need a lot of concrete to deploy that stuff. So we have a lot of, we've uncovered a lot of interest from really diversified end-use customers. Here's a little bit about our team. I'm a little low on time, so I will skip over the long spiel. But so I have two co-founders. My co-founders are Will Shrubar and Danielle Beatty, and we're spun out of the University of Colorado. And so we're currently raising a seed round that's going to get us into a pilot plant and up to 1 ton production of limestone. We can do all of our internal verifications, some select pilot projects with key demonstration partners, and then we will plan to scale into a minimum viable facility so that we can really make a dent in this industry that digs up and burns 6 billion tons of limestone per year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. All right, we have 2 more startups. Next is Civil Grid. And as I have to say, as someone who works in the solar industry, looking for solar sites, this is really relevant. Civil Grid centralizes utility, environmental, and geotechnical site data into an intuitive GIS platform for construction planning. Let's put our hands together for Josh, founder and CEO of Civil Grid.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, thank you everybody for being here. Excited to tell you about Civil Grid. So what is Civil Grid? We're building Google Maps for the underground, or Google Maps for project planning. A little bit of context. So my background's in construction and utilities. I developed utility scale solar. I've spent a lot of time in natural gas systems, worked at PG&E, executing large projects, have really managed over $500 million, or $500 million of construction work, and discovered in that process that, surprise, surprise, construction is hard. And construction is hard because there's so many different things that can cause a project to go wrong. And what was particularly frustrating is that in many cases, when things went wrong, we actually could have known about it. But we didn't know about it because we didn't have the insights in time. The data we need to properly site and plan construction is highly fragmented. So if we just look at the Northern California geography, there's over 700 utilities that operate over 800 different cities. And so as you're doing work anywhere throughout that area, you have to navigate different jurisdictions and dig up data from a number of different sources. A lot of times you end up skipping steps, and that results in challenges. I think we've all seen street gets paved, and then the year after that, somebody's out there trenching for a new telco. Or on my team, we had engineers who'd run around spending weeks gathering as-built from prior projects to try and understand what we're going to run into in the field. So that data fragmentation increases project costs, it increases risk. Well, we're here talking about climate, so why does this matter? As Sean mentioned, to solve the climate problem, we're going to have to do a hell of a lot of construction. EV chargers alone, we got to build 2 million EV chargers in the next 7 years. Not to mention undergrounding of power lines, building of new power infrastructure to be able to support the renewable facilities we're bringing online. So at Civil Grid, we're streamlining that process. We preemptively consolidate all the data you need to site and plan work. Where utilities are located, what do you know about geotech conditions, what do you know about environmental constraints, land rights. We package it, we've authenticated it and packaged it in a geospatial platform for use by, it's a collaborative platform for use by project teams in the pre-construction phase of the project lifecycle. So project managers, engineers. So we're moving them from using Esri, Google Earth, a lot of manual data gathering practices, to a single web-based and mobile platform that has all this data prepackaged on the back end and workflow solutioning on top of that to streamline design. So we can sell across the entire construction segment, be it transportation projects, real estate, or obviously all the green projects that we need to execute. The US market opportunity is about $4 billion. And I think what's really unique about what we're doing at Civil Grid is the combination of workflow and data focused on the construction segment. We're live in California. We've got over 1,000 data sources feeding into Civil Grid, over 700,000 miles of utility lines in our platform, over 150 proprietary data entities feeding data into the platform. And we had almost 700 projects last year use Civil Grid to streamline design. To give you a sense of what kind of benefits they've realized, so CHC does a lot of telecommunications work. They reduced their diligence cost by 90% and saved 2 months in the project lifecycle. If we take a utility example, so looking at PG&E, our estimates of the benefit that they're going to achieve just within their gas operations department is about $180 million. So we've got a great team in place. We're in the process of closing a seed round. So why are we here? If you are interested in investing, we might have a little bit of room for strategics. But more importantly, if you're a utility or a municipality, we'd love to talk. We'd love to partner with you on bringing civil grid to your geography. If you're connected to developers or engineers or are one of yourselves, we'd love to talk to you about using civil grid on your next project. Thank you for hearing me out. I'm Josh again. Dave here is with me. Come catch us afterwards. He's got the American flag belt buckle. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. All right. You've all been very patient, and we have our last startup for tonight. That is Blueline Battery. Blueline Battery designs and manufactures rechargeable lithium-ion batteries for market applications including industrial, stationary, small electric vehicles, and solar. Let's put our hands together for Phil, president of Blueline Battery.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Phil Fonfera. I am the president of Blueline Battery. We are based in Wisconsin. Our company is 7 years old, and primarily we make batteries for forklifts, so big industrial battery systems. We've also done a number of batteries for AGVs, working with companies like Toyota and Bastion Solutions. Ultimately, when you look at our business and what makes us unique, we make lithium forklift batteries. Lithium has been adopted at maybe a 2 to 3% level in the material handling industry. And the reason for that is because these systems are very, very, very complicated to engineer and manufacture. So I'm just going to skip ahead and talk to you about the problem. When you look at the picture there on the left-hand side, that is what all of our competition's batteries look like. That is a bird's nest of problems. When something goes wrong, you have to ship that battery back to the OEM for it to be completely rebuilt and reassembled before it can be sent back. That takes months. Our battery system is modular. It's a Rubik's Cube. When something goes wrong, think about changing a AA battery on the clicker for your TV. That's what we deliver. That's our IP. That's why we've scaled our business significantly over the last several years. Looking at that system, if I can go back a slide, this is really how you can see what that animation looks like. When that battery has a problem, we can fix that on site. These batteries, when you look at lithium and why that matters, the vast majority of electric forklifts use lead acid batteries. These lead acid batteries waste a ton of operational expense for companies. We work with a number of major corporations that save thousands of dollars per month per forklift by running lithium versus lead. So to talk a little bit about the market, in the United States, there's 3 million forklifts used on a daily basis. 1 million of those are ICE or combustion engine forklifts, and those are used in specifically outdoor operations. Indoor operations, because of the EPA, requires electric systems so that you don't have fumes indoors. Of those 2 million electric forklifts, roughly 95% of those use lead acid batteries. Now that is a big market for us, and we can ultimately help a ton of companies and big corporations with saving a lot of operational expense. Over 70% of that savings in that operational expense is energy reduction. And when you look at energy as a whole, 80% of electricity pollutes carbon, so we help companies dramatically lower their carbon footprints. We can deliver that to customers today. So how our process works is we go to a customer, show them their existing data on energy consumption with their lead acid forklifts, offer them a demo at no cost, run the battery for several months, show the delta in between, prepare an ROI analysis, and hopefully sell more batteries to that customer. We have dozens of batteries ready to go in our demo fleet, including chargers. If you offer me an opportunity, I can get you a battery in a week. We're ready to go. We've done this with dozens of major corporations. We're gearing up for a Series A likely next year, and we have the ability to ship tens of millions of dollars of batteries here in 2023. So if you're interested in partnership, come talk to me. We can talk about our case studies, some of the major corporates that we've worked with, and I'll skip ahead. I'll spare you the resumes of my team, and we can, oh, wrong button. And we can move forward. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Phil. So that concludes the aspect of the startup pitches. So I want to thank all 9 startups that were able to present today. Let's give a round of applause to them. Thank you so much. All right, we're getting towards the end of our forum. Our next and last keynote speaker is from EDF. EDF is one of the largest producers of electricity. They are headquartered out of France. It is my pleasure to introduce Osama Idress. He's the investment director of EDF Pulse Ventures. He leads EDF investment activity in startups and VC funds, partnering with entrepreneurs to address the low carbon transition in the areas of energy, mobility, sustainability, and customer service. Startups, let's listen up to this. All right, Osama will be presenting on EDF's leadership in driving forward a low carbon future through engagement with the startup community. Let's give a round of applause.
All right, thank you, everybody. This will be brief, I hope. I don't obviously match the energy of all the startup entrepreneurs here, so I'll do my best. But thank you again. Okay. So just quickly, many of you might not know who EDF is, so this is my chance to introduce it to you. It stands for Electricité de France, so nationally, like historically, the French electric company. Currently, it's a global energy company. We make about 84 billion turnover. Key point here that we're all very proud of, 91% of our energy mix is, let's say, low carbon. It's mostly nuclear and hydro, so let's even say maybe zero carbon, if not renewable. 167,000 employees all over the world. A big number here is 38.5 million customers. And this is important to note. We don't have necessarily any residential or commercial utility customers in the US, unlike our great friend at National Grid. Most of our customers are in France, UK, Italy, and Belgium in terms of utility customers. But really, in the US, for example, we have EDF Renewables. You might have heard of them. They're the second or third largest EPC for solar, wind, and storage project developers. And we do a lot of things around beyond becoming just a utility, or beyond being the national French company, which, if you haven't heard, we're actually getting nationalized. So we're officially going to be the national French company for electric utility. But we really are a multinational, global, with major subsidiaries across many different continents and customers doing different things all across the value chain of energy. One of the key things that maybe I also would highlight to you is, unlike most US utilities for sure, and maybe over globally, we have about 2,000 people in R&D. So when it comes to innovation within our group, it's ingrained, it's part of the history. It's about $500 million worth of budget a year. And that started because of the nuclear and hydro, as you would imagine. But currently, at least 50% of the budget and focus covers all sorts of renewable research, principal research, pilots, studies, AI, AR, VR, all of the things that you could think of, quantum computing. And outside of France, there's actually 6 R&D centers, again, to really highlight the nature and the international presence of EDF across the world. They're spread around different countries and different hubs. I personally sit at EDF Innovation Lab, which is the North American R&D center for EDF, right next door to EPRI, here in Los Altos. And the lab is comprised of 10, 12 really smart PhD folks. I'm not a PhD. And they cover, as you see here, all different aspects of where the innovation and the engagement in North America could be very beneficial back to the group in France and across the world. So think of them as center of excellences for the whole group in these different topics. The one in Germany, for example, is very focused on hydrogen and fuel cells. The one in Italy does certain things. But I sit as part of this team. And the reason I brought this up is because, again, there's a sister organization beyond R&D that focuses on just purely innovation, which is EDF Pulse. And Pulse is the brand world, which is made out of these 5 programs. Yeah, so if you think of R&D, and if you think as Pulse, here's the alignment in terms of innovation. And I'll get to where I am in ventures shortly. So EDF has this R&D plan to address the decarbonization for our customers, our operations all over the world. Corporate strategy has its own plan. So the business units, we have the 2030 hydrogen plan, the 2030 storage plan, the 2030 renewable plan. But when it comes to my team, we do 2 things. We do incubation and we do ventures. And again, this is important to note because the incubation part is really leveraging all that know-how and expertise and market knowledge where we as the ventures team spin out those companies. But EDF Ventures, finally, we get to it. This is where I work. We, the corporate venture capital team of EDF, we are mostly based out of Paris. I have myself here and my colleague Victoire. We have 2 people in the UK, but most of the team, 4 people, are in Paris. We have deployed about $400 million since 2017. To note there, that money is deployed across external startups, but also the incubation that I just mentioned, where we fund and really spin out some of these companies as subsidiaries of the group. That's why I wanted to mention it. We have had 17 external startups so far in our portfolio. So how does EDF Ventures add value to the group? I'm sure some of this information look very familiar, depending on whether you're corporate or even a startup who pitched to corporate VC before. There's many ways to describe it, but really it covers these main 4 areas, which I can jump ahead here, and this is where I'll just speak a little bit. When we look for investments, as again, saying all what I said, very European, heavy focused, utility, energy, with a lot of internal R&D, a lot of internal know-how. When it comes to the venture side, we really try to address those 3 things. So the strategic alignment here is the group raison d'être. I don't speak French, but it means reason of being. And this is actually in the bylaws of the company. So the chairman, as being, mostly reporting back to the state, they and the executive committee, they need to really show and validate how EDF raison d'être, which is the carbon transition, for us and to our customers. So it's really ingrained in many of our decisions. Obviously, we have to have aligned geographies in when we look to our investments. We mostly focus right now out of Europe, UK, Europe, and the US. And then I think I would like to spend maybe just 2 minutes or 3 minutes on this synergy potential. We are a very strategic investor. We are not going to invest again in startups that don't fit with our raison d'être. But we also are not going to invest in startups that we cannot have synergies with. And this is where I've done similar work at Siemens, Next47, and at Chevron Ventures. All 3 different companies in a way. One is resource, one is technology maker, seller, and EDF, which you could argue it's a utility as a service generation. It depends on how you do it, but it's a different variation. And from my experience and from what we're trying to do here, especially investing in US-based startups, to bring those synergies back to Europe, there's maybe 5, 6 ways like a corporate VC can bring value back to the group. And I listed, not all of them here, but I listed the 3 that we really care about in a bit of order as well. So one is the partner part, which is not the first one that people usually think about. I think most people actually probably think of pre-M&A, which we don't, good deals are good deals, but our main value back to the group is not going to be through M&A. It's going through becoming a partner. And what we mean by a partner is if we have shared customers with the startup, either their customers could be our customers, or our customers could be their customers, and we can join together to bring value back to that customer. We think this is really much more magnified than just even EDF as a customer, because at the end of the day, some cases are different, but you're one customer as a corporate. So if you could bring all your customers or many of your customers and have the validity to do that, this is really what we would like to spend most of our time looking into and validating. Co-development, leveraging our R&D, leveraging our know-how. we could bring a lot of value to startups that are emerging. And that's very important for us because we need to decarbonize. We're lucky our energy mix historically is low carbon, but we operate in many regions. We really understand that this innovation is not going to happen by EDF alone, and we really need to work with entrepreneurs. If the solution or the entrepreneur has the capacity or the ambition, like to go where we can go and help them grow, we'd like to talk to them and see if we could do it. Financial return, of course, as a CVC, you have to bring money back or you'll be shut down, as has happened many, many times for many, many CVCs. But before I go there, actually, let me say something. One thing I would share with you, again, with my experience, this is very simple, as you can imagine. This is way too simple. Capital letter EDF is about 15 to 20 different subsidiaries, and each subsidiary has a more natural, inclination to how to bring value back to startups. And our role as a CVC is really identify and find this natural, perception, like how can the startup work with this business unit, and how can the startup bring value back to the group? And we've built this nice interactive sheet with every business unit, people within the business units, because ideally the startups we invest in can bring value back to more than one business unit, more than one geography. And we spend a lot of time, honestly, we spend as much time doing all the diligence that VCs do, doing this part to ensure, again, because we're a small team here in the US, there's 170,000 employees at EDF, the ventures team is 10, but we need to leverage those 100,000 people. So we try to work hard to identify where are the synergies and how does our investment bring back value to the entire group and to our customer. From the financial return, we, again, need to bring back market standard returns, ideally top tier, but with long-term capital. We invest $5 million, Series A and B is our preferred. As you can imagine, partly the reason for that is we want to see a product, a customer, or at least a direct line of sight for a customer, because that's when we can add value. If we can identify their customer, and like I said, fits our product market fit risk, this is where we can add a lot of value to them. We have our own financial investment criteria. We, again, reviewed diligently by the French state and auditors and legal and finance and all of that. So we have to be very honest and thorough when it comes to our financial criteria. But let me see. So Series A and B, $5 million check. Mostly in the US, we actually follow. We would like to really co-invest with great investors as much as we can. Our value proposition is value add through either market growth or technology growth or a co-joint development together. And here is our portfolio so far. So these are the external startups we have invested in over the last, let's say, 6 years or so. And we're very thematic driven. So for every square here, and even within every subsector here, we really take our time, like I said, doing all the external diligence that we need to do on the topic, on the market, internally finding the right partners, and then obviously the startup itself has to go through that. I thought I can share with you in the next 4 minutes, which is going fast, the low carbon side of things. So you would see here similar logos. So some of these are our business units. So these are active business units, P&L, they actually are talking to customers. Some of them are subsidiaries, which we spun them out from EDF Ventures, and some of them are external investments. Last year we invested this, and this year actually, this one is this year, but last year we invested in B0 and Carbonate. I'm going to talk about B0 a little bit because as everyone mentioned, verification of carbon credits is a big missing or still have a lot room to improvement, and we really identified B0 there as a good partner for us. Carbonate is a point source carbon capture, primarily for cement industry. So again, we don't have cement plants, but our customers do. Our customers are. But what I really wanted to highlight here for you is that from the EDF venture side, we really try to understand how our investment fits with all these different players. Other portfolio companies, other spin-outs, business units, and our customers. And really all of them suggest that they will all, at the end of the day, there is a single customer somewhere who can benefit from having that portfolio approach. So Persephone has been mentioned a couple of times, is one of the companies we invested in a couple of years ago. They do carbon accounting. I'm plugging them shamelessly here because I thought all of you should know about them. But they really address many of the other innovations that people are bringing up, which is carbon accounting. And one of the things I just would say, financial accounting has not always been there. It's maybe 90 years old, 100 years old, something like that. And I think carbon accounting is just going to be as prevalent across every single enterprise. It will take time. Probably we'll find the right approach for the right different customer, just like you have Intuit and QuickBooks or KPMG or PwC. Different customers could have different solutions. But really, carbon accounting and people measuring their activity in carbon impact for every single thing they do. And this is why we like Persephone. They really do it just like a financial ledger. They have a carbon ledger. So we're working with them. We have the validity to bring them to our customers. Their customers could be our customers from the renewable side, from the energy efficiency side, from many, many other ways. And this is the partnerships that we look for. Obviously, they're based here in the US, and we're helping them grow in Europe. Another really portfolio company I would like to share with you, hydrogen has been mentioned as really, I worked at Chevron, hydrogen's always been 10 years away, but maybe these 10 years are really, really real. But at the end of the day, I think our value add is our project management expertise, project development expertise, balance sheet expertise, and this is what Dynamics does. They don't have a technology per se, they don't provide the actual technology, but they develop projects, and they partner with the customer side. Obviously, you have access to many customers in Europe, but also on the technology side. And lastly is B0. This is one of the latest investments we made. They partner with many of our customers, with many of our potential customers or even targeted customers, and we could do the same with them to validate and verify high quality carbon credits. So the reason I brought this up is just to give you a flavor of none of these, if we're the customer of them, would really move the needle. But the synergy that we really envision is working with them to grow to their customers, and very honestly, them helping EDF business unit have a better offer to their customers. And this is, I think, how we really maybe a bit different than many corporate VCs, especially here in the Valley, who represent international organization. It's not really us as the customer is the only way we approach it. And I thought that would might be helpful to you as well, from the startup side, to understand there's more than one way to leverage your corporate investor. And then from the strategic side, there are more than one way to really bring value back to the startup. And that's it. How about that? Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Let's give a round of applause for Osama. All right. On our agenda, there was another speaker planned. Her name, Pooja Jain. Unfortunately, she was not able to make it tonight. Unfortunately, there were some conflicts in her schedule that came up. All right. So you have heard an abundant amount of ambition through venture capitalists, initiatives that are global at scale, but bring it back to what some of us can do at an individual level and at a partnership level. So I would like to take a moment here to get your feedback. This forum is a stepping stone for future events and forums, and Plug and Play and EIN take your feedback, and we take it as very valuable. So if you could take your phones out, this is a QR code. There's about 10 questions about the event today. We really appreciate you being here, and if you have any interest in volunteering or being involved with our organizations, this is an easy way as well to select that. All right, I want to pass this over now to Wade for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Kevin. And again, one last time, congratulations to EIN for having built the platform and growing it since 2019, the inception. Not much closing remarks, just to say I was asked to share some updates on our investments as it relates to energy and sustainability. We've got about an hour left for the event to conclude. The startups will be here. The startups who didn't get a chance to present, feel free to be using those demo tables that are empty to network with the audience, our speakers. They were so gracious for spending their time with us, and they're going to stick around for another hour or so to meet with you and speak with you. I do wanted to mention that I've been with Plug and Play for about 7 years now, and the level of interest, I know I just came back from Sarah Week, 8,000 people from across the board. They were attending. The level of interest, engagement, government support is at an all-time high. For energy transition topics. We're so excited. We deployed about $15 million last year alone in about 100 companies. Our average check size was a little bit smaller than 2021, shrinking from about 140K to 97. This was because of the market backdrop that we saw in 2022. We're seeing the tail end of that, but we're excited. We're pushing the gas pedal. We're seeing a new crop of startups that are tackling climate change, and we welcome you to work with us and with our partners who are here today. Many of them didn't get a chance to share their journey, but hopefully in the future events. We formed a partnership with Arizona Commerce Authority. We announced it this week. We're having a kickoff event on April 5th in Phoenix. My colleagues are here, Ruzbe in the back, who's leading that effort. We also launched a semiconductor initiative that actually is going to be anchored out of our Phoenix office. On April 25th, we're partnering with CEA, which is a French R&D commercialization firm, also focusing on semiconductor topics, aerospace and defense, and startups are going to be pitching to some of the partners that they have in France, including EDF. And then lastly, our June 6th to 7th is the commencement of about 7 or 8 of our practices across energy, automotive, real estate, construction, and a few other areas. If you'd like to know more about these, find us at the back. I also wanted to give a few shout outs to our team members, Arsh, Edward, Kevin, obviously, Genevieve, and everybody else who helped us out to pull a great event together. Please give them a round of applause and find the startups here on the demo table.